Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live. YouTube, 7 a.m. Monday morning. As always, it's our Christmas episode, in case you haven't noticed. Sam looking good. Not as festive as last year with the full Santa suit, though.
No, though it does mean that I don't have to wear the stupid itchy beard again. I can have my own beard, and that's better. So I got the hat. I got the Christmas jumper. I was standing in line for coffee this morning looking like this. It's great. We did presents, right? We did. I kind of told you that I've got your present. We gave Tyler his T-shirt. We're not going to do gift exchanges on the show, but I brought a gift.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I brought a gift. You want to see?
Yeah. What is it?
What's up?
We brought Mike Renner.
Hey.
It's like a full reunion show here.
That's right.
No one gave me the Christmas dress-up memo.
That's true. We didn't give him the Christmas memo, but he's here.
Is that a Notre Dame jacket? This
is.
This is Mike Renner, for those who don't know. I don't know who those are.
Have to blast it out after a dominant win over an Indiana team that shouldn't even been there. So
He's got Notre Dame jacket and Green Bay Packers T-shirt. He's full, Homer get-ups this morning.
Well, it's a good season. The owner of the Packers, big Notre Dame fan and alumni. Mike, welcome, man. What's going on? What are you doing over here?
I'm coming back. My in-laws soon-to-be in-laws live in Cincinnati, so I'm back for the holidays.
Congratulations.
Thank you. In-laws. Thank you. That's great.
What's your take on the college football playoff? Because everyone's like, right up until Tennessee lost, it was like, this is a joke. It should just be more SEC teams.
Yeah, well, see, I don't even think we should be arguing that. I think we should be arguing about the fact that Oregon got absolutely hosed by their draw. They're the number one team in the country, and they got a worse draw than Penn State, who they beat in the Big Ten title game. Penn State had to go play SMU, and then they play Boise, whereas Oregon now has to beat Ohio State and then probably Texas. And then to maybe face Georgia. They have to face probably the three best teams after them, whereas Penn State could maybe just sneak through by going SMU, Boise, Notre Dame. Like they're run so much easier. I think we're screwing the top teams by the format is the biggest thing. Debating who should be 12th doesn't even register. They shouldn't even be in. It should have been max 8. In my opinion, like 5 or 6 would have been better. I still maintain that 5 would have been the best because 5, you have a 14 playoff that then goes and faces the number one team in the finals. That rewards being the best in the regular season more so than this. You just have to reward Oregon some way, shape, or form more than they did this year. I think that's the biggest thing. Don't get distracted by who should be number 12. Debate why we are not giving Oregon more deference for being the best team in the country for 13 weeks.
I like it. We need at least a reseed if they're going to keep it like this. Reseed and just kind of set it up for the best teams to be rewarded.
Reseed's great. Yeah.
I wasn't ready for the college football takes right off the top, but was a hot button issue this weekend with all the home teams winning.
A lot of people mad. What
else we got from Mike today? Is he helping us go game by game? It's all brought to you by Prize Picks, of course.
No, Mike. He's not here for the duration. Later.
That's game 6.
What's that?
He's not here for the duration. I think we can keep him for a few minutes, and then he's got to, do things as opposed to sitting on our show for like 8 hours.
Yeah,
I do have a question, Mike. Though, are you just rolling in from the night, or are you awake nice and early?
What are you right now? I actually didn't even catch that last drive there of the Sunday Night Football. Got a nice 7-ish hours of sleep. No, not even 6 hours of sleep, and then we're here.
It was a crazy ending. Did you see that play?
Yeah, it was. I actually watched it on the way in, but I actually left my computer at the office. Was the real impetus behind being here.
Perfect.
I was watching games last night.
Yeah, the show is, if anything, even longer now that we're out on our own.
You're not even if unconstrained this pod.
I mean, you were one of the.
It could be an 8-hour. It could be just like a live stream your lives.
Like you're one of the originals, right? You used to be a big part of this show, and you, I'm sure, are acutely aware of instructions from above to, for the love of God, make it shorter. And every step of the way, we've gone the opposite direction, and it only continues to grow.
You got to be you, and that's why you guys have been so successful. It makes me very happy to see how much you guys have grown over the years of the pod and to where it's at now. So
appreciate it, Mike. And likewise, you're over there flourishing with CBS Sports.
We're doing all right. We'll have a draft show on CBS Sports Network come spring. Make sure to follow me on X to find out when.
Yeah, Mike, promote all your stuff. Where can everybody find all your great work?
Oh, yeah, Pushing the Pile podcast, 9:30 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Thursday. And I have a CBS Sports Network show on today, Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern. Matt Ryan is on today. Jonathan Jones is on. Going to break down Week 16, the playoff picture. But yeah, then the spring I will have a 1 hour long draft show weekly. I think post combine on CBS Sports Network. You guys can find it. So.
On TV by yourself?
Yes, and not by myself. We'll have other people joining, but it'll be mostly your boy.
Why did you say that
great.
like it was a concerning thing? You know, Mike will have to run a television show all by himself.
Completely dependable. Mike's one of my favorites. We only poke fun at Mike. His work is great, and every time you're on our show, you've been on our show a few times now as a guest, talking draft and everything. People love it, so we appreciate having you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, fellas.
It's funny how many listeners, viewers, or whatever we have that that have been here since the time it was a 3-man booth with the three of us running, the PFF NFL podcast. It's wild how many of those people there are that do see this as a reunion show of like, hey, this is what I started listening to. God, how many years ago was that?
6.
Right. That's crazy.
The last time it was.
Well, the podcast. I mean, Sam and you and I have been on it forever, but it did go through different iterations. The 3-man booth. We had a host way back in the day. That's why we talked about Bobby and Zach as, being a part of the podcast. They were a big part of it for a while.
Yeah. Oh, Zach, is he gonna get? Who gets head coaching job first, Zach or Bobby?
Zach after.
Zach's
poor old Bobby. I think is experiencing the fickleness of the NFL. It's like
he should have jumped on that.
Right. This time a year ago, Bobby was like head coach candidate number 2, and now it's like, that guy sucks. Everyone hates him.
Mike, any NFL the Bobby thing brings up in my brain how their O-line has really struggled picking up stunts and pressures and everything, and that's just like an NFL trend to me. Mm-hmm. Any big NFL trends that have hit you this year?
Yeah, I think like looking towards the draft, there's a few things this year that I'm gonna more so take into account, and I think one's undersized edge guys, like Andrew Van Ginkel's, Chop Robinson from last year, but
Nick
Bonito, athletes, defensive line, versatile guys that can blitz, run stunts, because a lot of times on blitzes, stunts, slants, whatever, you're not winning one-on-ones. You're just like out-athleting. It's like, can you get there fast enough? So I think we're trending towards those guys becoming more valuable. And so like guys like Jalen Walker from Georgia, it's like, it might be a top 10 pick now because, maybe he's a tweener 10 years ago, but right now you can use that guy in a role, or people are using them in such a role that they're going to be more important.
That's where I've always said Trayvon Walker's at his best. When you free him up,
we just let him,
unblocked. That's when he gets to use all that athleticism.
He should be a tight end, Trayvon. That's my.
Oh my gosh, yes.
He was so good with the ball in his hands.
Running back.
We've dropped that take already on the show.
Yeah,
like
unbelievable.
Jack, best place to put him. Ball carrier.
Right.
What else you got, Mike?
Oh, I'm trying to think.
How much time we have with Mike here before we have to hit on 15 games?
All right.
Acting like he's your dancing monkey. Like, come on, Mike. Give us a take.
I mean, I think the other thing is just like you have to have an offensive line now. If everyone's going to sit in too high, you just have to be able to have an offensive line.
This was funny as a year because I was like right on the cusp coming into this year of deciding that like the last several years, it's like all the Shanahan offenses, you're like, their offensive line sucks. Yeah. And yet it didn't matter ever. Like last season, you were like, Houston's offensive line is not good. And yet Stroud and Bobby rock up. And like, oh, look, doesn't matter. Miami, one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL on paper year after year. Mike McDaniel, fast. Now that one still holds a little bit. And Shanahan as well. And then this season, all three of them have been really struggling because of the offensive line. Like, oh, maybe it does still matter to have actual blockers capable of blocking people.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a Philly, Detroit, KC, even like their interior.
Yeah.
Buffalo, one of the best O-lines in the league. O-line, if you just have that, chances are you have. So, like, just draft them. I think last year was the year to do it. Obviously, last year had so many more than this year, but you just need them. And you need to draft them because free agency is so fickle. I mean, obviously, you can do what Washington did, and it helps when you get a lot of guys playing above what their expectation was free agents, and that's, if you don't have them, for sure go out and buy them, but you just need to draft them nowadays.
Are we going to hear more about the value of the running back due to Saquon and Henry and Josh Jacobs and what they've done this year? You had an astute point a couple weeks ago about the market and how it's changed over the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fallen off a cliff. It has cratered. And now I don't know. I think we've reached the point where they're as valuable. You can say they're at least as valuable as the contracts they're getting. Well, when you're getting as much as Gabe Davis, right, you're more valuable. Saquon is than Gabe Davis, or Derrick Henry is than Gabe Davis. So it's corrected. Now, do I still draft him top 10? If there's like a better player at a different position, I think the draft conversation is still a different animal. But definitely when guys are getting, and especially when contract lengths are like 3 years now, because contract lengths at running back used to be like, Adrian Peterson signed like a 5-year deal. And it was like 4 years before you could cut him. That was the biggest thing when you're really just hamstrung by him. So if you get a guy and he's good and you sign him to a 3-year deal where it's 2 years and then we'll see, and it's like a Josh Jacobs or a Christian McCaffrey, it's like, I think that's worth the risk if it's really just 2 years of it. Because, performance could fall off a cliff, but when you know he's already that good at the NFL level, it's like.
What is your overall takeaway from the running back performance this year? Because I know, like, you've got the same interesting backstory as we have in terms of where we came from and the kind of ideas that embeds in your head, and you're also not dumb, which means you're unlikely to be the kind of person that's saying, well, if you look at the records of the Green Bay Packers, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Baltimore Ravens, and then compare it to the records of the 3 teams that those players left, you can see that running backs are all MVP candidates. So what is your actual takeaway from the performance of these guys?
It's still not – it has changed the value a touch that everyone's living in too high defenses, that it's so prevalent. And I mean just too high, but like even when they're playing single high, it's not as focused on the run. So it does change the calculus a little. Now, is it even close to a quarterback? No. Like it's like that's still absurd. If you're either putting Saquon Barkley first in the MVP conversation or not in your top 10, right? Yeah. It's like there's no in between, because if it's actual value, he's not. He's just objectively not. But he is definitely worth far, far more than his current deal, in my opinion. And so it is a position that O-line you still want first. If you were to give me, can I get the best running back in the NFL or the best O-line in the NFL, it's like not even a debate. You still want the O-line first. You still need that first before you put that guy behind it. But they're far more valuable than even like an okay number 2 wide receiver, like the number 2 wide receivers that are getting paid at that, even like the $17 to $18 million level. I'd rather have that running back at this point.
Yeah, like I've described it before as, because the thing, everyone treats it as just a static constant, right? Like running back is worth X, but it's different depending on what's around the guy, right?
Yes.
So I think the thing that's changed for me is you look at a Saquon Barkley, and we kind of knew that this was going to happen anyway. Like you rewind to what everybody was saying, Saquon plus this Philadelphia offense was going to equal some really impressive success, right? Even with that expectation, it succeeded it. And I think what you're seeing is that if you have the league's best offensive line and, Jalen Hurts at quarterback and a couple of good receivers and a really good defense, you plop a ridiculously talented running back into that environment, and it can absolutely turbocharge what you've got there to a degree that even I didn't necessarily think was going to happen.
Yeah, and that's why I say it doesn't necessarily change the draft conversation, because that was the argumentation for Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round, right? But I do think you still struggle to evaluate who the best running backs are. It's still not such a cut and dry position that there are no misses. So you take them in the first round, the way people kind of argue for offensive line, which I would argue is probably easier to evaluate. The NFL has a better track record at O-line than they do at actually identifying who the best running backs were in the first round.
Just want the explosive running back. Even Devin Achane and, Bucky Irving, even though he didn't test well, explosive big play type of guys. Give me those guys.
Don't give me Rachaad White.
Rachaad White with the bad fumble. Bijan has the prettiest 14-yard runs in NFL history, though. I'm still begging Bijan to break off a 50-yarder. Feels like he's calibrated to have awesome 12-yard runs instead of dude, take it to the house. But we'll get there.
He's great.
Producers are begging us to get to the games here. So.
Okay, all right, get to the games. I'll tap out. It was great seeing you guys, though.
That was look. I'm not trying to kick you out.
No.
That was great.
Get to the games.
I think Mike actually has to do things in his day as opposed to just co-host the show for the next 12 hours.
Well, it was good to have Rudy on the show for the Christmas episode here. Rudy. And Mike, you're free to drop by anytime. I don't care what our producers say. I don't care what Janko says. You're always welcome.
Thanks, Janko. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Sam.
Anytime, Mike. Yeah. Thanks for showing.
Take it easy.
Always welcome,
Renner.
Michael. Always welcome.
Reunion show. Reunion, clip. Again, I'm shocked Mike's up this early. He's a whole new man. Since he cut his hair, man, he really is.
It was the making of the man.
So welcome in to Check the Mic. Once again, we are going to be going game by game. It's all brought to you by Prize Picks. You can use the code Check the Mic. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. We'll tell you more about Prize Picks a little bit later today. Sam, you ready to go? Game by game? We got to be real quick. 5 minutes a game. Here we go.
Let's go.
Started Thursday night. Los Angeles Chargers 34-27 over the Denver Broncos. Huge game with AFC playoff implications. Both teams now 9-6. Broncos had it in hand early on, but the fair catch free kick, first one since 1976 that the Chargers hit, turned the whole thing around.
First one made, yeah. Jim Harbaugh, I saw saying this is his favorite rule in football. He's apparently been trying to get one of these like for the last decade or so. Attempted one back when he was 49ers coach. I mean, okay, I don't quite understand why this would be your favorite rule ever as a coach. It's
because he's Jim Harbaugh, man. That's what Jim Harbaugh does.
I mean, it's fine. This was the first, like I'd seen a couple of these attempted before. This was the first one I can remember in like fairly makeable, range. Like 57 yards these days is fairly.
Well, they
attainable.
needed the fair catch interference penalty.
Yes,
that was what balanced it out.
That's why. Like normally you're seeing these just at the end of the kick, and that makes it like a 70-yard attempt, and it's like, I mean, at some point, Brandon Aubrey or whatever is going to nail one from 70, but it's still a massive outlier at this stage. 57 though, you're like, that's like a lot of kickers can make a 57-yard kick.
Yeah, so that was a key point in the game. It was 21-10 going into the half. That made it 21-13. And, Herbert went on that second half run where he started making some big-time throws. Ladd McConkey, another nice game for him with 6 catches for 87 yards. And Chargers get the win, so they're currently right ahead of the Broncos, 6 seed. Broncos are the 7. Both teams pretty much in charge of their own playoff, hopes here. Every other team in the AFC kind of needs a miracle that includes one of these two teams collapsing. So it was a big game, but a little bit bigger for the Chargers, who came in a game behind the Broncos.
Yeah, both teams I think are still in pretty good shape. Like all of the teams behind them, all of the in the hunt teams won yesterday, right? So all the Miami, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, they all at least kept the pressure on. But both these teams are still a couple of games. The only one is a Denver schedule. Like if you look at the sort of, in order for the Bengals to make the playoffs, they need to win out, and one of Denver and the Chargers needs to lose out. Denver's at least is because one of those games is against Cincinnati. So right. Assuming you lose that one, that's the same game. Their final game is that Kansas City game that we've been talking about since like late October. Right. That's one that's doable. Like if Kansas City still has things to play for in that final week, which they may well not, that's at least plausible. You lose to Cincinnati because they need the win. That's one of those games. And then if you don't get the win against the Chiefs, that is at least plausible, if still unlikely.
Yeah, it's a huge game this week, Bengals and Broncos. And then if the Chiefs win on Christmas, they're not playing for anything week 18. So they're just one win away from clinching the number 1 seed. So there's a chance. Andy Reid has a history of resting his starters, so that's a likely outcome for this Broncos Week 18
But
game.
that is like a really interesting. We've been talking again since October about the potential peripheral things on the line in that final game that the Chiefs probably don't think about, but could actually come back to haunt them. Like if you're in a game where if you try, you might put Denver into the postseason, and Denver's actually quite a dangerous opponent for you. And if you don't try, you might let Cincinnati into the postseason, and they're the one team historically that's actually scary to Kansas City, that actually seems to have the ability to go toe-to-toe with them. Now, it's a different Bengals team this year. I don't think it's quite the same thing. But can you imagine going into that game for Kansas City if, theoretically nothing is on the line for them, but you kind of have that option, like which one of these teams do we actually want to let into the postseason?
Yeah, as the number 1 seed, I don't think they care that much.
Right.
If they have the 1 clinched, I don't think they're caring.
I don't think they do either, but it will be like that's the kind of thing where, like the Raiders yesterday, right? Like when we get to March and April, we're going to be talking about that game potentially and what they did to their own draft pick, way more than we are right now. That's another one where when we get through to the divisional round of the playoffs or the AFC Championship game, we might be talking about what Kansas City did in the final week of the regular season.
All right, man. Anything else on Broncos Chargers here today?
Not really. Both defenses, I think, had periods in that game where they looked good. we had that streak where Justin Herbert caught fire, but again, wasn't the whole game. Second week in a row, though, I think overall, you were kind of asking what's happened to the Chargers defense. It's kind of gone AWOL the last couple of weeks from, again, before Baker Mayfield showed up against them. They were the league's number one defense, and it hasn't been that for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, Denver was running the ball pretty effectively. I mean, Denver came out smoking. Chargers played a lot better in the second half there. But yeah, both defenses underwhelmed a little bit. Like I said, indoor-ish type of game. I know there's little opening, but indoor-ish type of game there where it just kind of played like that, you know?
Yep.
All right, let's get to the Saturday games here. Kansas City Chiefs get the win 27-19 over the Houston Texans. Chiefs move to 14-1. They're just, again, one win or a Buffalo slip-up away from getting that number one seed. Texans fall to 9-6. We may have talked this is like the fifth straight Patrick Mahomes injury that we overrated. He looked like he couldn't even walk on Sunday against the Browns, and he comes out and kicks the game off with a 15-yard touchdown scramble. So health was not an issue.
Yeah.
And Marquise Brown made his return. And look, Kansas City still hasn't put up over 30 points in a game this year. That is true. But they're playing these ball control, compressed types of games. This was one of the best games their offense played in a few weeks here. And I think Marquise Brown maybe opens things up a little bit for this offense. Another weapon.
I feel like that stat lost a lot of weight once we had to make it over 30 points. It used to be
hit 30
previously,
once or twice.
Yeah,
or whatever,
previously it was Kansas City still hasn't scored 30 points this season. That kind of had some resonance. Like that landed. And then they got to exactly 30, and we had to modify the stat to be like, oh, well, they haven't scored over 30 points this season. It feels a little contrived now. I'm just not as impressed by it as I was when it was reaching 30.
Houston. So Kansas City came out firing. Houston made a few big plays to get back into it. The biggest of which, C.J. Stroud hitting Tank Dell on a long touchdown. Thank you for my prize picks projection. But man, Tank Dell, unfortunate injury on that play. Unbelievable throw by Stroud. Unbelievable catch by Tank Dell to hold on through his leg injury. But man, he gets injured once again. It looked pretty bad.
Man, I feel so bad for Tank Dell. I mean, amazing to hold on through that. Like, I have seen injuries where players have thrown the ball away, like literally thrown it away. They're in so much pain. Tank Dell's lower leg is hanging off at an angle that it's not supposed to, and he still held on through the ground, completed the catch, and kept hold of the football before he was given medical attention. And that's now 2 years in a row where the poor guy has gone down for the year on essentially friendly fire, right? Like, remember the last injury, he was blocking on the goal line, trying to help his team get in the rushing touchdown, and his leg got kind of rolled up from behind. And this one, it was a teammate coming in from the side that caves his leg in. Looked like a really nasty injury. I mean, they said it was a dislocated kneecap, but when you sort of listen to the Twitter doctors out there, they're like, there's more to that injury than just that. I mean, David Chow was out there saying you don't get kept in the hospital overnight for a quote-unquote simple, dislocated kneecap. Like, there's other bits associated to that injury. Just so unfortunate for Tank Dell because he's a great player. Like, he's this undersized guy, but he's lightning fast. He can make great catches like that. And for Houston, I mean, this is they're still in good shape overall, but no Stephon Diggs now, no Tank Dell now. The offensive line is getting more and more banged up, and it was already a problematic unit. At one point in this game, the entire right side was down. Shaq Mason went down as well in that game. The right tackle went down for a period, and he came back. We're in this world where some of these teams are sort of staggering into the postseason under the weight of all the injuries. Houston is getting really badly banged up right now.
Yeah, they are. And it's another game, this was supposed to be a big part of their test. I've talked about the Texans ceiling still feeling high to me because they haven't played to their potential. But another game, against a good Chiefs team, it never really felt like the Texans. Of course, they took a lead early second half, but it never really felt like they had a chance. They couldn't slow the Chiefs down when they needed to offensively, other than maybe, forcing a field goal in the fourth quarter. But the Chiefs offense moved the ball pretty effectively, ran out the clock, did their thing in the fourth quarter. Long drive to kick a field goal to go up 8, and then a 3-and-out, and then, ran out the last 3 minutes plus, almost 4 minutes to finish the game, and that's where the Chiefs offense has shines this year. It's not the explosiveness, it's not the big plays. I am interested to see if those show up a little bit more now that defenses do have to, like, think about this. Andy Reid and the Chiefs, who tend to save stuff for the playoffs. I don't think that's fake. I don't think that's just Chiefs fans saying, "Oh, we'll save the good stuff." There's elements of that. Andy Reid now having Marquise Brown, Xavier Worthy, who looks a little bit more comfortable now, and DeAndre Hopkins all in the field at the same time. Travis Kelce's still out there as well. I think they'll have some explosive play opportunities in the playoffs, but they've run this ball control offense extremely well to complement their defense.
Well, the other thing, so obviously Mahomes' ankle was significantly better than we thought it might be based off his injury, the way he left the game. But the big concern, do you play him, do you rest him, was the offensive line and what that could do against the Houston pass rush. They really shut down that Houston pass rush because the ball came out quicker. That, for Mahomes, was an average time to throw in that game of 2.48 seconds. I think there's a stat here. NGS had a stat that Mahomes was most efficient in the quick passing game in their win over the Texans, finishing 17 of 19 for 155 yards and a touchdown on passes under 2.5 seconds. Mahomes averaged his fastest time to throw. They have 2.5. PFF has 2.48, same ballpark, in a game since week 4 of 2021, powered by AWS, according to them. So this was like they had a problem on the offensive line. Joe Thuney, that's their solution, right? Joe Thuney, the left guard, is playing left tackle against top-tier pass rushers. That weakens 2 offensive line spots because you've got Caliendo out there at left guard. And it wasn't a problem in this game, despite, I think, neither one of those guys on an individual level being amazing, because the ball came out faster than it usually comes out. And whether that's a Marquise Brown thing helping that out, but they're able to get the ball out fast when they need to.
Even though we may have overrated Mahomes' injury, we were right about that part. Going in with the injury, a probable game plan to get the ball out of his hand, to be a little bit more decisive, reads 1, 2, and 3 before trying to run around. Other than a couple scrambles, you did see that, getting the ball out quickly. And so, look, Mahomes, Chiefs, multiple ways to win offensively. And for the Texans, just a tick below, I think, where they were going to be. Yeah, the offensive line, pass protection issues. Stroud made some special plays, but they needed even more to pull the upset. And
then the other stat that came out of this game was around the NFL. I had a tweet. Kansas City now has a 14-win streak with 30 or fewer points this season, as you said. Is now the most in NFL history, which the reason I like this stat is it breaks a tie with the 1925 Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. And anytime can invoke the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets in an NFL stat, you got to do it.
What a powerhouse that year the Yellow Jackets were, and impressive that the Chiefs could even be mentioned in the same breath as the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. That's a special season Kansas City's putting together here.
I mean, that's the controversial 25 Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. That was the Pottsville Maroons championship controversy, which you'll know all too well.
One more thing about this game that I don't know if anybody cares about. My Saturday, look, I'm back in Massachusetts with the kids, and we're taking the kids around doing Christmas activities and everything. And I had to live a childhood nightmare, which was there's a big game on, and I've been brought to a museum. The Museum of Fine Arts. It's like a nightmare, right? I'm over here. I want to watch a game, big game's on, and I got to go to the museum. But I made do. I sat by myself, streaming the game on my phone with my iPad, watching the game while the kids and my wife walked around and looked at art or whatever they did. So we made do during this game on Saturday.
I was texting you at the time. I was like, you are basically living a TV commercial at this point, right? It's like a deathly silent museum, and you, this giant 6'10" guy sitting there on your phone watching game, presumably yelling out, cheers or encouragement or
I
noise.
Almost did. When Tank Dell made that catch, I almost screamed in this quiet, whatever. It was outstanding. So anything else on Chiefs Texans? Like I said earlier, Chiefs 1 win away from clinching the number 1 seed. They'll turn around here on Christmas and take on the Steelers. Yeah,
I mean, big picture for the two teams. Houston just continues to get more and more banged up in important aspects, and they feel like one of those teams staggering into the postseason. Meanwhile, Kansas City showed that they're capable of that kind of adjustment. I mean, we said this going into the game, right? This was the point you brought up in the preview show. Mahomes has demonstrated now a repeated ability to change his game and adapt it for specific in-game circumstances. That was a different offense than we've seen from Kansas City. The ball came out fast. Mahomes was able to mitigate the pressure from his own offensive line because the ball came out quicker. And whether or not he's able to scramble, it does, like, he's able to change the whole dynamic by the way he plays the game. And that is one of the reasons why this team remains, the favorite, I guess, for a three-peat.
All right, let's get to the second game on Saturday afternoon. This I watched from a family party. We'll talk about that in a minute, I'm sure. Baltimore Ravens 34-17 over the Steelers. It was 24-17. Russell Wilson throws a pick six to Marlon Humphrey. I mean, high-level story of this game, I think, is Russell Wilson turnovers at inopportune times. Of course, a pick six and a fumble on his way in. 10-5 now for both teams, tied atop the AFC North. The Ravens creeping right back into the AFC North playoff picture here.
They really were. This was the game that Baltimore hasn't been able to have against Pittsburgh. The Steelers have usually done a really good job of basically shutting down Lamar Jackson, forcing him into bad games or substandard games, and have kept these games really close. This was the game, though, where Baltimore just went, not this time. Lamar Jackson was great. Derrick Henry was great. And when those two things happen, that puts the Steelers offense in a bit of a hole, and they're still without George Pickens. That's a really important player for them. They weren't able to keep pace.
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted out during the game from my family party, so this was the setup here. We go from the museum to a family Christmas party of my wife's. So I made sure by 30 seconds in there, I had the double box going at the party, watching the college football playoff and this game on. We set it up pretty well. So we made do with this one at the party. But Lamar Jackson, like, my whole takeaway from the last matchup was the Steelers made life difficult for Lamar. They made all the windows a little bit tighter, and he was like just missing throws.
Right.
He hit those throws in this game.
Yeah.
He hit a few of those big time throws. And, people came back and said, yeah, the Steelers are banged up. It's their, backups in the secondary. That's all true. Look, the Steelers might be hitting the wrong end of their injury variance on both sides of the ball right now at this time of the year. But they were still tight window throws, Sam. They were still difficult throws for Lamar. And he hit 3 or 4 of those that ended up being not the difference in the game, but, of course, a huge difference in the game before Derrick Henry started to do, his creating his big plays in the second half as well.
Yeah, though it's always worth remembering, like, the little plays that bounce your way in games, early in games, that change the whole course of the football game, right? Early in this game, Baltimore fumbled the ball twice, recovered both of them. Then later, you get Russell Wilson takes off scrambling, gets inside the 5, and they're like, whatever the sort of hoop dreams equivalent of the red mist descended, like, Russell Wilson normally is maybe the best quarterback in the NFL at sliding before anybody gets near him and not taking the contact. He kind of got to the 5 and was like, oh, I can John Elway. I can get this. I can score. Went in, just collapsed into a hit, fumble the ball away inside the 5-yard line. You've got Baltimore gets lucky in their fumble luck. Russell Wilson makes a mistake, fumbles the ball away. Massive swings in Baltimore's favor. If this was a normal Steelers-Ravens game, maybe the Ravens lose one of those fumbles and the Steelers get a much more favorable game script situation earlier on, and we're talking about a completely different dynamic.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's when we're previewing the games. We're not like, hey, this team's going to fumble 3 times and they're going to, get all the luck or whatever. All the fumble luck's going to go one way. There's definitely something to that. I mean, I think there's the bottom line for the Steelers fans, for me, is we talked a lot about Russ maybe raising the ceiling of their offense. I still believe that's true. It doesn't mean it's great every single week. There's games where Russell Wilson's, just going to be okay. And in this game, a couple bad decisions, man. I want to shout out Adarius Washington, who's just made a ton of plays this year for the Ravens. The great Mike Renner, who was just on here about 20 minutes ago, loved Adarius Washington coming out of the draft in whatever it was, 2018. This was his first year, actually. We all loved him. It wasn't just Mike. First year he's actually getting extended playing time. And every time you look up, breaking up a pass, making a key play, he's been outstanding this year for the Ravens. And I think, they they made a whole bunch of huge plays that they definitely didn't make in that first matchup.
Yeah, no, they did. I think a big part of this, Russell Wilson made a couple of bad mistakes. The one we talked about, we got a miscommunication. So we talked up Rashad Bateman before the game. Bateman has a really nice touchdown. The Steelers' secondary is pretty banged up. They were able to get that touchdown, gave them a touchdown lead. It was 14-7 at that point. Then there's a miscommunication between Lamar Jackson and Bateman for an interception. But the very next play, Russell Wilson throws it back to them. And you're like, okay, the two massive plays where Pittsburgh could have hung in this game, they gave the ball away. What did this game do, in your opinion, to the ever more eloquent MVP discourse? Because Lamar Jackson, I thought, played at an MVP kind of level against a legit defense. We said this could be his signature MVP moment, only it wasn't because Derrick Henry went nuts as well, so nobody cared.
I can't believe you're dragging me into this discourse that you hate.
Uh-huh.
You know what I think is going to happen? So many people are so caught up in the discourse part of it, in the narrative part of it, right? We were calling out Dan O for declaring the end of the MVP race last week. It's like, dude, there's still 3 divided by 7. There's still 23.5% of the season to go here, Dan.
Doesn't count.
And I think someone called him out at least on that on ESPN. Again, that's like throwing your Heisman vote in there before Thanksgiving. I got my Heisman's locked up. Doesn't matter what happens the last 3 games of the season. It's ludicrous. Somebody's going to get at the end of the season and say Lamar Jackson's stats are what? Is what I actually don't have them right in front of me. But 4 picks now, right? And 35 touchdowns or whatever it is, passing.
Yeah, they're nuts.
So somebody's going to get to the end of the season and look at the stats side by side and be like, maybe Lamar, what's so funny? People are walking in over here laughing at me.
Look.
Just trying to work. I'm at work, please.
We could just keep it professional, people.
I am trying to work here, okay?
That's what you wear.
Of course, it's Christmas. Of course this is what I'm wearing.
Yeah.
Anyway, people are going to get to the end of the season and look at Lamar Jackson's stats and say, oh, maybe we screwed up.
Yeah. I mean,
and I'm not saying Josh Allen doesn't deserve. I'm not saying either way. I'm just saying people are underrating Lamar's season right now.
If you add in his rushing, right, he's got 40 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He's averaging
some fumbles in there that so you'd have to balance out some fumble turnover.
He's averaging 8.9 yards per attempt and 6.1 yards per rush. I mean, from a statistic, but this is like Dak Prescott a year ago, right? Dak Prescott had the best stats last year and nobody cared because Lamar Jackson was the narrative winner.
Well, but last year made sense, right? Because Dak didn't have any good games against good teams, and it was fine. In most years, I'm adding up the total, not the totals. I'm looking at the totality, every single throw, every single play, and that matters. The narrative stuff mattered more last year to me because all the guys competing with Lamar statistically were literally throwing games away or just didn't, were no-shows in big games. Like Dak, he beat up on bad teams. That's not the case with Lamar Jackson this year. So it's Lamar and Josh Allen. That's fine. They'll take it. Burrow's right up there with both as well. So we'll see what happens. You're a voter, Sam, so you can still be swayed here these last couple of weeks, especially if Burrow carries the Bengals to the playoffs. You never know.
It's a fascinating dynamic because I hate the award and I'm not wedded to any one of these sort of ridiculous narrative takes. So my vote is out here to be swayed by a compelling argument, right? Whether that's whether I'm making this appeal to Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow and Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry directly. If you guys do something to influence my vote, you could have it. That's 1 of 50. Or whether I'm making this appeal to listeners or viewers, if you have a compelling argument for one of these guys, I'm open because right now I am undecided on who the MVP is.
Great. So you're just astute viewer these next couple weeks. And
there's a question
Lamar,
from the chat.
Burrow, Allen, Saquon. State your case.
There's a question from the chat from our super listener, or whatever you call those people, Mohal. Who do you think that the lowest net worth AP voter is? Is it me? Is there somebody worth less money than me that has an AP vote?
Wow. That cuts deep. You just signed a big deal with 33rd team here, man.
Yeah,
don't underestimate.
We're building this thing from scratch. You got to start in low. Maybe in a few years we'll climb up the rankings.
You should have seen who they had as AP voters a couple years ago before they rejigged the whole list. It was like, this guy hasn't written in 12 years.
I'd have definitely beaten some of those people. Surely.
Yes. All right. You got anything else on the Saturday games?
No, I'm out.
There'll be Saturday games this week. There's a triple header in week 17, and then week 18, there's going to be a double header. We're going to be out at Circa for all of the week 18 games. So we'd love for you guys to come join us. We're thrilled to be sponsored by our friends over at Circa Resort and Casino, one of the premier destinations for sports fans in Vegas. We'll be there for the finale of the regular season. So it's the Friday night before week 18. That's January 3rd. 2 games on Saturday. We'll be watching right there from Stadium Swim, and be up at the Legacy Club. All sorts of great stuff over there. And then we're going to watch all the games on Sunday as well. So it's week 18, January 3rd through 5th. We're going to have a meet and greet on January 3rd. That's the Friday night. So come join us at Circa. There's a link in the YouTube description, circalasvegas.com/huddle-up at Overhang. You click that link, go to the Los Angeles weekend because they're playing the Chargers. It's Chargers Raiders, and sign up to come join us. So we'll have a little meet and greet Friday night, hanging out, watching the games on Saturday, and then the whole slate on Sunday. And then I think we're going to have a very special, we'll see, I think we're going to go live right after the games finish. So instead of Monday morning, week 18, it's going to be a Sunday night, week 18, instant reaction. Of course, if you wake up on Monday morning, it'll already be there for you. But it's going to be a fun weekend for us over at Circa, which we love because it's a great place to watch all the games, Sam.
Dude, it's going to be so exciting. I'm so excited to watch a slate of NFL games from that sports book. Circa as a resort, as a casino, is a phenomenal place. Like, everyone focuses on the Strip in Vegas, the stuff that everyone knows. This place, downtown, is, I think, the best place I've stayed in Vegas. I am pumped for that weekend.
All right, man, we are too. So check out the link in the description. Sign up for the Los Angeles weekend, week 18. Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals get the win here, still alive in their playoff push. It's 24-6. Bengals move to 7-8. Browns fall to 3-12. One of 5 teams now that has 3 wins, I believe, in the Tankathon. Is it 5 teams or 6? I think it's 5. So Browns currently number 5 in the draft order per Tankathon. Dorian Thompson-Robinson got the start for the Browns, and like other starts of his, they didn't go great. So
yeah,
that was it.
Wasn't outstanding from DTR. Like Jameis, it wasn't just a benching. Jameis apparently showed us up on the injury report as well. So, but yeah, I mean, if we were expecting to see any kind of, I mean, Jameis is their best option, right? He's also the most entertainment value of any quarterback in the NFL. And okay, you're going to have to live with the fact that it won't always be good. And sometimes you're going to get very, very bad Jameis. But he's still the best quarterback that the Browns have because DTR isn't that guy. From the Bengals' perspective, like, Joe Burrow was out there doing ridiculous Patrick Mahomes stuff all the way through the game, including literally throwing a touchdown from like a horizontal falling down position. So do you see that play? You know the one I'm talking about, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because the big thing was like, oh, look, his knee's down. This is ridiculous. But he tripped over his own offensive lineman, I think. So it doesn't matter if his knee's down or not. Like, he's not down by contact. He's just down. You could throw the touchdown from your knees if you so desired, as long as you weren't knocked there by a defender. If you just fell over or tripped on your offensive lineman, the play's not dead. Throws a touchdown that way. Another pass later on where he's like weaving in and out of offensive linemen, and then Mahomesian flicks it out. Like, the dude is playing. I mean, he's playing at an MVP level. It's just that nobody's going to give him the vote because the team stinks.
I mean, there's other parts of the Bengals offense too. And again, just a reminder, we're talking a bad snap, missed game-winning field goal. We're talking, a 4th and 20 pass interference against Kansas City. We are talking a handful of plays away from the Bengals being a 10-win team, maybe even an 11-win team. And that's part of the NFL, right? So they've earned this 7-8 record. But if that was where Cincinnati was, and they're going into the playoffs, we'd be talking about Chase Brown adding an explosive element to their offense as he did yesterday. Yosivas Princeton finding the end zone once again, becoming just a really good number 3 wide receiver option, pushing away the challenge of the great Jermaine Burton, stealing wide receiver 3 snaps from him this year to go with the 1-2 punch of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. The emergence of Mike Gesicki at tight end in certain games as a complement. Like, this offense all of the holes that they may have had in previous years, not all of them, but a bunch of those holes, they added more explosiveness. They've added a few more targets to go with the 1-2 punch. Jamar Chase having an historic season, Burrow putting it all together. Maybe they missed Joe Mixon at times, short yardage type stuff and game flow type of stuff, but an explosive, really effective offense run by Burrow, and then a defense that has really only played well when they've gone up against the Daniel Jones, a DTR, had a couple turnovers yesterday. But that's kind of been the story of Cincinnati's season.
Yeah, I mean, the offense is still as good as it's ever been. Okay, on the one hand, the receiving core might be as good, if not better, than it's ever been when you consider Mike Gesicki, I think, has been a really important addition for them. As you said, Princeton is replacing what they lost in Tyler Boyd. Jamar Chase is still as good as anybody in the NFL. T. Higgins looks spectacular. Burrow's playing out of his mind. The receiving group is still as good as it's ever been. On the other hand, they are operating with Cody Ford out there at left tackle. Like, the offensive line is not good. It's a potential problem, and Burrow is mitigating that. He's playing incredibly well. The offense is still spectacular. The defense is not good, and as you said, it's sort of ticking up in recent weeks. And, if you wanted to say, oh, look, if the Bengals do make this postseason run, but it's ticking up because they're playing some offenses that aren't as good. Like, and some quarterbacks that aren't as good, I think. It's still a really rough unit overall, and is the reason they're in this hole. You're on mute if you want to, take care of that anytime.
As I was saying, just to touch on the Browns really quickly before we wrap it up. Like I said earlier, number 5 in the draft order per Tankathon. Be interesting discussions this offseason if they're, supposedly going to go with Deshaun Watson for one more year. Kind of stuck with him as far as the cap situation goes, but do they start to get ahead of drafting a quarterback? Are they in the mix for trading up? And, again, they're very much, they could be drafting anywhere really from 1 or 2 all the way down to 6 or 7 or 8, depending on what happens over these next couple of weeks. So Browns will have some potential quarterback decisions in the draft coming up here.
Myles Garrett in this game became the youngest player ever to clear 100 sacks, which is pretty impressive.
He's just 29, man.
Yeah, before 29. He's not even 29 yet. This was the first guy to do it before his 29th birthday.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. He's been outstanding. And the Browns had a shot early on. Jerome Ford with a huge play almost immediately, put the Browns into the red zone. They get stuffed on the goal line. It was pretty much all done after that. But yeah, congrats to Myles Garrett on getting the 100 sacks.
There was a bunch of statistical, historical, quirks in this game. Garrett got his history, the 100 sacks thing. Jamar Chase topped 1,500 yards for the first time in Bengals history. Ocho never did it. TJ Hushmanzada never did it. Chris Collinsworth never did it. Jamar Chase, the first guy to clear 1,500 yards in a season. Joe Burrow apparently becomes the first ever quarterback in NFL history to have 7 straight games with at least 250 yards and 3 or more touchdowns. They were throwing up the graphics of just 3+ touchdown games, I think, and there he's 2 behind Brady for the most ever. But the first guy to ever hit 250+ and 3+ for 7 straight games, which again is this MVP caliber level we're talking about that simply isn't getting the recognition because the Bengals are only in the hunt as opposed to actively in the playoffs.
And the play that put him over the top, they were supposed to be running the clock out up 17-6, and he just kind of, got the Browns to jump off sides, threw it up to Jamar Chase for a 32-yard touchdown. So
Myles Garrett jumping off sides.
Yeah. Negates that sack for Myles Garrett.
Right. What's called.
All right. So here's what we have coming down here. Bengals have the Broncos coming to town Saturday afternoon at 4.
Yeah.
This is the game Bengals fans have been pointing to for weeks. If they're going to make a playoff push, they need help from the Dolphins and Colts losing. Have to beat the Broncos this week. Basically have to win out, but that's obviously a high leverage game in Cincinnati this week.
Yeah, I was hoping this page would load while you were talking, but unfortunately, here we go. So, it doesn't have the leverages in. I was curious what the leverage of this game is because, as you say, it's huge. Denver, Denver and the Chargers are both still in a really good spot. But if they lost this game to Cincinnati, I don't know how much it swings in the Bengals' favor, but it's got to be a lot, right?
Yeah. I mean, the Bengals have been incrementally adding, and this would I think, be a massive chunk in their favor if they could get the win. So, anything else on this one?
Nope.
All right, let's go. One of the other AFC teams battling for that final spot: Indianapolis Colts 38, Tennessee Titans 30. It was 38-7 at one point in this game. Titans scored the last 23 points, got within a score, but the Colts end up holding on for the win. Like I said, they moved to 7-8 here in the mix for that final spot, and the Titans fall to 3-12. Another one of those teams with 3 wins. They are currently number 4 in the draft order as of right now.
I mean, what the hell was with this game? Like the Titans even they had like an early touchdown bomb to Calvin Ridley. We get a bad Anthony Richardson interception, but it's like all Indianapolis after that. As you said, they rack up this ridiculous 38-7 beatdown because the Titans kept turning the ball over. There was even an Anthony Richardson to A.D. Mitchell connection that actually happened for one of the first times this season. Now, it was a really nice catch by A.D. Mitchell, but even in a good, productive, impressive, explosive play connection, it was like if Richardson had the ball a yard further left, Mitchell probably scores on that play, as opposed to look at that amazing catch that he had to make over his wrong shoulder tracking the football. The inability of those two guys to connect on the same wavelength for exactly the play that it should be is mind-blowing this season. And then somehow this became a game again. Like 38-7, and it became a one-possession game at the end. It was ridiculous.
I also thought that A.D. Mitchell catch was going to get overturned. Barely, ball kind of hit the ground. I thought they were going to overturn it. It is amazing how they always seem to be like just a little off even when they connect. But yeah, like the Colts ran like crazy. So the Titans were playing hard early on. Like you said, they're up 7-0. Richardson throws a bad red zone interception. Looks like, hey, the Titans could pull the upset. Colts score the next 38 points, including Jonathan Taylor with 2 long touchdowns. One of them a 70-yarder. He's running through the goal line, making amends for last week. I wonder if every player says, hey, next time I get the chance, I'm running through the end zone. They never have another chance other than Deshaun Jackson, who's done it 5 times somehow.
Right.
But Jonathan Taylor said, no, I'm running Bo Jackson style into the tunnel. We're going to make sure we get through there. He got not gifted, but kind of got handed a third short touchdown after Anthony Richardson was marched just short on a run before that. Colts run for 335 yards in this game on 50 carries. It looks like a college box score, which happens with Richardson a lot.
Right.
Because he only goes 7 of 11 for 131 because they ran for 335. So they're dominating this game. But Mason Rudolph had one of those Levis type of high volatile games, hits a couple deep balls, has a couple interceptions in there. Titans at least fought back to make it a game late.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to Jonathan Taylor. I mean, that guy, we ripped him, I think, justifiably on this show. It was an incredibly stupid thing that he did to drop the ball before the end zone. To his credit, like he was pretty broken up about it when they were interviewing him after the game. Like he took full responsibility, said it can't ever happen, and he went out there to make that point. And as you said, the first one ran into the tunnel. The second one, like he's running literally through the end zone. That thing, I think you were saying that. Like the second line is the one he's dropping the ball on. He gets through the goal line, runs 10 more yards through the entire end zone, and then drops the ball at the back line. That's what you should be doing. I mean, this is like, when you fumble the football and the coach makes you carry around the ball for the entire week with the whole team, punching at it every day in the facility, that kind of thing. Jonathan Taylor was doing like a self-imposed version of that. And, credit to him. That's what he should be doing. He'll never do that again. I have faith. Deshaun Jackson was perfectly prepared to do it 4 more times. I have faith that Jonathan Taylor will never do that again. Yeah,
that's the rule. Run all the way through. So, yeah, it was Indy did a really nice job blocking up front. Offensive line did a nice job. Bernard Ryman with a big game at left tackle. Josh Downs had a really nice touchdown, too. I definitely thought he stepped out of bounds on that when he was tiptoeing down the sideline, 31-yard touchdown there. So, yeah, good win by the Colts. They were supposed to win that game. Almost let Tennessee back in it. Tennessee shows that they're not soft. They've got toughness. They stayed in it and everything. It's not their issue. They're just, look, sometimes you just give up 335 on the ground. You get blocked up. Our friend Ross Tucker, who was on the show last week, said horrible safety play. Some of the worst safety play I've seen. I mean, on a couple of those runs by Jonathan Taylor, just some rough reps in the secondary from the Titans in run support.
There was also a notable Yeah, notable. Like for a guy, you got Tavondre Sweat, right? The guy's 366 pounds. Now, he doesn't always play in that style, but you're not supposed to give up 300-plus rushing yards when you've got a guy that weighs 366 in the middle of the defensive line.
Yeah, completely agree. So, Colts are 7-8. They're 2 games behind both the Broncos and the Chargers. They're going to need some help, just like Cincinnati, just like Miami, those teams that are – oh, Miami's officially out, right? The other 7 and 8 teams that are just hopeful here. Got to win out and need help from either the Broncos or the Chargers collapsing here.
I think there's Miami's still alive. All 3 of those teams kept themselves alive with wins.
They did, yeah, because they have the same record. Why did I have it in my head?
San Francisco was out.
It's the team that, okay, my bad. I apologize.
Oh yeah. So does that game change your opinion of the narrative of, because it was a Rudolph at Christmas game like before, only this time it didn't go well?
I don't think maybe it wasn't close enough to Christmas.
Gotcha.
Last year was literally on New Year's Eve. Right. Christmas Eve.
Got it.
So I would, if in a couple of years where the schedule reverts back to Christmas Eve games, maybe it's a good year to have Rudolph as your backup.
Right. Or if you're one of those teams where you get the Christmas Day games, you get the Netflix game, you need Rudolph.
I mean, he's a guy that works once a year, basically. So if you have him for the day where he's an effective backup, we've seen that.
Well, he's the guy that needs to be in the emergency backup house, right? You dial the number. We only get for the rest of the time, give me Jameis, but for the Christmas game, Rudolph.
Christmas game. Yeah. You think Jameis could lead the sleigh? I imagine that.
No.
You'd make it to half the world.
Backwards.
He'd end up on Mars or something.
Yeah.
It'd be brutal. All right. Enough of the Christmas Rudolph puns. Anything else on this one?
Nope.
I got to tell you about our friends over at PFF. It's the very end of fantasy season. You know the key to winning your fantasy league or making the right bets. It's all about having the best data. That's where PFF Plus comes in. With PFF Plus, you're not just getting surface-level stats, you're getting insights that power winning decisions. From in-depth fantasy projections to market-beating betting angles, PFF Plus has everything you need to stay ahead. Picture having access to player grades, positional matchup charts, rankings that give you the upper hand on your competition. It's all backed by PFF's world-class data. So whether you're making crucial start-sit decisions or choosing a side, make sure you're doing it with the best intel out there. Visit PFF.com to become a member today. PFF Plus, powering winning decisions. And I hope our friends at PFF are excited to have Elf reading about how you could be making, better decisions. They knew what they were getting into.
That's true.
They know what we're capable of here because, we spent over a decade at PFF helping to make it as great as it is right now. All right, let's go Arizona Cardinals and the Carolina Panthers. Panthers get the win. Congrats, Dr. Eric Eager, on the overtime win here, 36-30, walk-off win with Chuba Hubbard with the touchdown in overtime. Looked like the Panthers were letting the Cardinals creep back in. 58-yard field goal at the end of regulation. Kind of a weird sequence there to give the Cardinals the game-tying field goal to get to overtime. But the Panthers get the win to move to 4-11, moving further away from a top pick. They're now number 7 in Tankathon. Cardinals fall to 7-8 after this loss.
Well, they're the team that's damaging their draft position that probably doesn't care that much because all of a sudden Bryce Young is playing like the number 1 overall pick that he was. Just a short time ago, we were questioning, we talked him up quite a bit since his comeback. And first of all, it was like, well, he's playing well relative to the expectations from when he was benched. And then it was, okay, now he's playing well overall. And then he had that stinker against Dallas where, he fumbled the ball every time anybody got near him, and he was just overwhelmed by a more talented defense, I think. And then we were questioning, well, how does he bounce back? This is the first legitimate setback since he was benched, since he was sat down, since he was essentially written off as a quarterback. And, he didn't just bounce back reasonably well. Like, this might have been his best game. He was outstanding in this game and in a variety of different ways. I've said repeatedly since he came back, we have seen Alabama Bryce Young for the first time really in the NFL. This looked like an Alabama game. Like, he's out there scrambling for positive plays. He scrambles for a touchdown. He trucks a guy in the secondary. 5'10", 180-pound Bryce Young trucked a safety, I think, coming up to try and tackle him. He delivers a pass whilst getting literally deleted from the play by an unblocked blitzer right up the middle, pops up smiling at the guy, like loving life again. And then I think the next play or 2 plays later delivers an absolute dime into the end zone on a fade route to a receiver for a touchdown. I'm so impressed by Bryce Young in this game. I mean, this was the Alabama Bryce Young. Okay, caveat, Cardinals defense, we know that they don't have a ton of talent from a personnel standpoint, but it's a well-coached unit, and it was torn apart by Bryce Young.
And so for the 4th time this year, we're explaining to people in a game where Bryce Young had 158 passing yards, Sam.
Right.
Can't be more impressed. And it's true. Again, big-time throws that he's made, touch throws. I thought his touch was outstanding. Deep ball got dropped. Another one, receiver couldn't keep his feet in bounds. Had a great one to David Moore for a touchdown. And then, he was just unbelievable in this game. Again, as you mentioned, running, throwing the ball, comfort level. Don't care about the stat sheet. I know the passer rating is fine. And he threw 2 touchdowns on 26 attempts. Another really clean game from Bryce Young.
Well, this one at least you can easily give him back. Previously it's been like, okay, there's 100 hidden yards in here by receivers not making plays. There's one of those plays in this game. But more importantly, he had 68 rushing yards. So you can simply say, he's got 68 more yards than you're paying attention to if you're only looking at the passing stats.
Oh, it was legit, man. The only big one there, Carolina's running out the clock late. They're up 3, and Bryce Young hits a nice 3rd and 8 throw. And again, this is where I think I've been most impressed by him is key 3rd downs, whether it's Kansas City game under pressure, Bucks game, he made some big ones. 3rd and 8 converts the first down. They still have enough. They'd still need one more first down to clinch it.
Right.
Has an open 3rd and 3, and he kind of misses that one. So he did let Arizona back in right at the end of regulation. So it wasn't all, again, it's not all perfect.
Right.
But add this another box to tick, right? What happens after a bad game, with Bryce Young? For a guy that was stacking poor games as a rookie and early this year. You mentioned what seemed like the mental aspect of it, not free and having fun, not playing with the playmaking ability that he had at Alabama. So this was another box to tick, I think, bouncing back from a bad game and showing that, he had the amnesia needed to play quarterback the right way.
Yeah, like you said, it wasn't perfect. That 3rd down was one he won back. Huge game from both the primary running backs in this game. James Conner was fantastic, didn't end up mattering because Chuba Hubbard was the guy that salted the game away in overtime. And I felt really good for Chuba Hubbard because, remember, he was the guy that fumbled the ball the last time they were in overtime against the Bucks, right? Basically cost them the game. He gets to be the guy that ices it with a touchdown in overtime and puts it away. So amazing Bryce Young performance. Chuba Hubbard was fantastic. The Panthers, as I say, they're the one team that's damaging their draft position that are probably looking at it and going, well, we've got our quarterback anyway. We're not in the quarterback market, at which point the difference between, the 3rd overall pick and the 8th overall pick, it's not that big a deal.
So the Cardinals are officially eliminated from the playoffs. A couple interesting dynamic, here. In overtime, both teams had traded a couple possessions. Arizona went for it on 4th and 2 on their own 18 in overtime. And a lot of people are asking, why are you doing this? Because if you don't get it, obviously Carolina is immediately in field goal range and you're going to lose the game. Cardinals needed a win is the problem, right? A loss is as bad as a tie in that situation for the Cardinals. I think they're probably eliminated by both. They needed a win to stay in, and credit Jonathan Gannon for making that decision. I still come away from this Cardinal season overall impressed by Jonathan Gannon and what he's done. Kyler's going to be fine, though he's very inconsistent. Had an ugly interception in the comeback attempt here, and then all of a sudden he's running sweeps for touchdowns. He could do both ends of volatility for Kyler, but Arizona overall, to me, impressive this season. James Conner, shout out to him, as you already mentioned. He was unbelievable in this game. I think there's a foundation to build upon in Arizona. I think there's just certain games where the talent deficit catches up, and this ends up being one of them.
Yeah, I think that's true. The other thing is, though, how wildly, we've been making this point all the way through the season, right? The Cardinals go as Kyler Murray goes, and when he plays like Superman, they're extremely difficult to stop. It is worth noting how rarely that occurs, though. At least this year. He's done it previously on a more regular basis. But you look at his season this year, it's like 3-4 maybe performances where he plays amazingly. The baseline in the games where that doesn't happen is not particularly high.
Yeah, it is. I don't know how you solve that. That's kind of like, how do you beat good teams versus only beating up on bad teams? I don't know how you solve consistency issues, but obviously it's a huge factor with Kyler and the Cardinals. So yeah, good win by Carolina in overtime. Anything else on this one?
No, I got no more use for that game.
Oh, look at you, stealing my lines.
Mm-hmm.
Los Angeles Rams get the win over the New York Jets, 19-9. Rams staying in first place in the NFC West, actually putting a little distance between themselves and the Seahawks. Now Rams are 9-6 after their 1-4 start. Jets fall to 4-11. And they set other futility records in this game as well, scoring only 9 points without punting.
Yeah.
Kept getting stopped on fourth down.
Yeah, it kept going for fourth down. And like the fourth downs were like a microcosm of their season. Every time they were going for the fourth down, it was like a, low probability one-on-one play to Devontae Adams or whatever. Like that was their offense in a nutshell, all the way through the season. And was it Rich Cimini had that tweet? The Jets' day and season in a nutshell. They haven't punted, and they've only scored 9 points. They'd be the first team in the last 25 seasons to not punt in a game but be held under 10 points. Like, it's okay. It's just not good enough at the moment.
Part of that's a game flow issue. Like, they only had 7 total possessions. I feel like we've seen more of these games this year than ever, which is the really, really low possession games. And honestly, that's the story of Kansas City's season, right? Kansas City's got the 3rd best points per game allowed, and it's a lot because the offense is controlling the ball, right, and they're just, tightening up the games. The way that we always used to say, this is how you beat a Kansas City. We're seeing more of these games, I think, around the NFL where it's a 7, 8, 9, like 8 or 9 possession game, which is really low. And then just the margin for error becomes, that much tighter. You have to put points on the board.
Well, it's ironically, we used to say that's how you beat Kansas City and stop their offense being so insanely explosive and productive. And now it's the way that they're winning games. It's kind of bizarre that way. But yeah, in this game, you're right. This game was flying through in terms of time, which felt like a kind of nod to, like, did you see how much tickets for this game were changing hands for before the game? It was going to be like 15 degrees at kickoff or whatever. It's in MetLife, which is already a pain in the ass to get to as a stadium. You could get tickets to this game for like $10, $15 before the game. And honestly, if the money was flowing in the other direction, like if you were paying me $15, I don't know if you would have got me to sit there in the stands in 15-degree weather to watch this version of the Jets play the Rams in a meaningless game late in the season.
Yeah, I don't like the cold weather games if I'm not in the press box. So the biggest play of the game here, like, Rodgers was hot early. They had a 99-yard drive right off the bat. Again, they never punted. It was either missed field goals or turnovers on downs. There was a fumble in there.
Yeah.
But the Rodgers kind of holds the ball too long in the pocket. Cam curls on the blitz. Second opportunity, strip sack on Rodgers. It was a tie game at the time. It was tied at 9. That set the Rams up for the go-ahead, eventual game-winning touchdown. And then, again, the Jets had another opportunity. They drive down. You need a field goal to get within a score. Missed the field goal, and rest is history there. Another really, really nice game from Kyren Williams. Had some beautiful runs in this game. Finished with 122 on the ground on 23 carries, including the touchdown. Didn't need much from Stafford in the passing game, but Puka Nacua got his 8 catches. And Rams, second straight week, they kind of win ugly, right? Yeah. Beat the Niners in the rain, beat MetLife, beat the Jets at MetLife in the cold after winning the shootout against Buffalo 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, solid win from them because the Jets are at least dangerous and pose some problems. That fumble was huge. I think that was really the difference in the game. And then the other bad news, unfortunately, for the Jets is the left tackle, Olu Fashanu, went down, carted off with a foot injury, I think, for him. So that's tough. I mean, there was a lot of debate on that draft pick at the time. I think it was a good pick for them to get that contingency at left tackle or right tackle as well, given the way they were preparing him earlier in the season. They needed him. Tyron Smith's been down. He's been playing pretty well at left tackle, and now he goes down. it's just one more kind of body blow for this Jets season.
So they're 4-11. Where are they in Tankathon? Number 8, right behind Carolina, tied with Chicago. 3 teams tied at 4-11. And again, the Rams 1 game up now on Seattle in the NFC West, plus tiebreakers.
Mm-hmm.
Rams are on a run here. Anything else on this one, Sam?
Nope.
Let's get to our favorite team. What? We don't have one. Detroit Lions get the win over the Chicago Bears, 34-17. Lions move to 13-2. And we know Lions fans love watching Check the Mic. What we don't know is why everybody's not subscribed.
Yeah.
Only a third of our viewers are actually subscribed. That's it. Just a third. And we're trying to get to 100% subscribe rate here.
Look at that.
So click the button.
We really pushed the boat out in the graphics department for that one.
Wow. You weren't. Were you busy talking to Renner when we were talking before the show, and we were talking about how we were setting that up?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's the first time I've
good.
seen that. Yeah, why do we love Lions fans? Because Lions fans pay the bills.
Pay the bills.
They
pay the bills, man.
But
not the subscriber bills. They're only at 33%. We got to get up to 100%. So hit that subscribe button that was up there.
100% is
10
ambitious.
seconds ago. 100%.
This game was like, this is how the first game should have gone. Remember back in Thanksgiving, the first half, the Lions were absolutely annihilating the Bears, and then somehow didn't quite put the game away before halftime, and Chicago was able to execute a comeback, really drag themselves back into it, and then botched the clock management at the end of the game, and that's what ultimately did in for Matt Eberflus. This game was similar in that Detroit's 10-0 up. Odunze gets a catch and run, fumbles it at the end. Like, it's all Detroit early, and then Chicago just never got close enough to execute the comeback.
Yeah, just another game where you could highlight all the great playmakers from the Lions and the way they get them the ball, right? You've got Jamison Williams on the long 82-yard touchdown. What a dime from Jared Goff there. Jamison Williams finishes with a $143. I just love the games where they tap into his speed, and whether it's even just like a simple quick out where corners have to account for it, or the times they're taking the shot plays, Jamison Williams has to be accounted for. And then the fun trick play, Sam, where people are like, oh, Jared Goff stumbled. We said, no, this is by design. He stumbled. Jameer Gibbs fell over on the play action. You yoink Sam Laporta up the seam for the touchdown. Just a beautiful play, and Ben Johnson never runs out of his trick plays.
It really doesn't. I mean, he said that right earlier in the season when people are like, you breaking out all these trick plays every week. Like, you're not. He's like, there's no shortage of these, right? We've got tricks for days, and that was one. They faked like a botched exchange. They faked a botched pitch. Like Jared Goff pretends to stumble over. Jameer Gibbs launches himself to the floor as if, oh no, the live ball. And then, no, it's just a play-action fake, and they hit Laporta over the top for the big play. I mean, they do seem to have an endless volume of these trick plays, which I mean, look, they're banged up on defense. That side of the ball is in rough shape from a personnel standpoint. The offense is still cooking. If they are going to beat what they did last year in the postseason, they're probably going to need to break out a ton of these trick plays and just try and do everything they can to stay ahead of the game flow, because the defense might not be able to hang in against the best teams in the postseason.
And it's not just the tricks; it's that they could beat you with power. They could beat you with Jameer Gibbs had to handle the workload in this one. 23 carries for 109, so that's 4.7 per carry. Only at a long run of 12 yards. So you don't have the explosive play from Gibbs in there, but he also had 45 yards through the air. So I think that was one of the questions too with David Montgomery out. What happens with the from like a workflow standpoint? Gibbs handled that pretty well. They were 1 for 2 in disrespectfuls. I appreciate everybody tweeting at me when the disrespectful run shows up.
Remind people what the disrespectful run category is.
Built just for the Lions. 3rd down, 3 to 8 yards to go, and you just run a run play. Not a draw, no trickeration, just a straight up run play, disrespecting the defense, saying we're just going to run it right down your throat on 3rd and medium to long. And they had a 3rd and 6. I think they got the first down. Gibbs got stopped at the goal line, and then they got in a couple plays later. and they got stopped on a 3rd and 3. So 1 for 2 on their disrespectfuls. And there's just, again, so many ways to win offensively for the Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown had his 6 catches for 70 yards. Laporta had that touchdown. Gibbs out of the backfield, and as I mentioned, Jamison Williams. So so much going for the offense of the Lions. They get up 27-7, and then Caleb Williams and the Bears, crept back into it a little bit. Touchdown before the half to Keenan Allen. And if you were just looking at Caleb Williams and his side of the ball, some big time throws and his best game in quite a while.
Yeah, I thought he played really well, actually. I mean, he was hitting, there was a hole shot to Keenan Allen, which looked like some of the throws that we saw on those training camp videos where it's like, look at what this guy's doing in training camp. It's amazing. Like some of the throws look like that. Absolute dimes, like arm strength, velocity, precision. It was really impressive. Eric Edholm had a tweet from NFL Research. Caleb Williams has now lost 9 starts in which he threw 0 interceptions, which is now the most such losses in a single season since quarterback starts were first tracked in 1950. His interceptionless attempt streak has now reached 326, which is over 100 attempts more than the previous longest rookie streak in NFL history and over 100 longer than the previous longest Bears streak in franchise history. Essentially, they should not be losing these games where Caleb Williams is playing such a clean brand of football, and it's unusual for that to be happening.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on what that actually means because, we care more about other stuff like turnover-worthy plays, in which he's got 7 in the last few games. He's had, so since week 6, just what I'm looking at using PFF, 5 games with no turnover-worthy plays, and then 7 across the 4 other games. So it's not like it's completely clean. And he also takes a ton of sacks, right? And so he is there. Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, those are 2 of the guys. Ryan Tannehill, a couple of the guys that skewed lower interceptions, higher sack totals through the years. So if we're going to start seeing Caleb Williams on that spectrum, Deshaun Watson did that kind of early in his career before he was just bad at everything. But no, he actually did that this year too. He was low interceptions for the Browns too. Like his turnover-worthy play rate wasn't bad. He just didn't have any positive plays. So that's going to be just interesting to watch with Caleb Williams. Is he great at taking care of the ball? I don't know if that's the case because he's taken so many negatives. And I do wonder if he should do a better job of throwing the ball away, giving up on plays, or maybe forcing plays a little bit more. And who cares if you throw a pick or 2 here and there? But I honestly think it might start, look, you're not going to beat the Lions, but might start putting the spotlight on Ryan Poles a little bit more than we had anticipated coming into the year, where the Bears started out 4-2 looking great, kind of collapsed here, and the entire roster went from, oh, they're on the upswing to, hey, wait, what is actually left here in Chicago building around Caleb Williams?
It is a data point, though, or a stat, or a kind of, it's an outcome-based stat, right? So it's one where I don't think the turnover-worthy plays thing actually matters. It's like, I know what you're saying though. You're saying like if you're never going to have interceptions, you should win more games. Yeah.
I'm just saying it's not a full reflection of Caleb Williams being like, Mr. Safe and
no, agreed. But what it is, I think, is a reflection of the fact that Chicago is finding weird ways to lose football games that shouldn't be happening. And obviously one explanation for that is botching an end of game clock management situation, which is why Matt Eberflus isn't there any longer. But like yesterday was a really good example where, Caleb Williams actually played really well and played a clean brand of football, and they still weren't anywhere near winning this football game. Like it's sort of a reflection of what is wrong with the Chicago team, that even when he's playing like that, they're not at the races necessarily.
Yeah, that makes sense. I agree with that part here. So Lions are 13-2. The Vikings got their win later. The Eagles lost, which we'll talk about in a minute here. So Lions, if they win out, of course, it's all coming to a head with that Week 18 game. Yeah, 2 13-2 teams in the NFC North. Both teams have to take care of business next week, and then that's I think likely the Sunday night football game, right? Probably Lions Vikings for the number 1 seed in Week 18.
That would be, that's the way to do it, I think, if that's the way it pans out. Detroit needs to go on the road against San Francisco. The 49ers are done at this point. They've got nothing to play for, but they're still dangerous. But if, Minnesota has to get by Green Bay, which is the more difficult game. But if those 2 teams are still level, whether or not it's they each get a win this weekend or they each cop a loss this weekend. But if that's the that game where for all the marbles in the NFC and potentially the 1 seed, that should absolutely be the featured game that weekend, and what a game that would be.
Anything else on this one?
Nope.
Yeah, no more use for this game. All right, we'll get to the Eagles in a minute, but going to tell you about our friends over at GameTime. So if you're looking for those Rams-Jets tickets on the cheap, or if you want to get to Bengals-Broncos, they won't let us into the press box this week, Sam. So if we want to get to Bengals-Broncos, might need to go over to GameTime. It filters out the fluff to get you all the incredible deals you're looking for on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. GameTime does a great job curating your list so you can save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever it is you're looking to buy. They have the all-in pricing feature, which you can toggle, shows the total upfront, so there's no surprise fees at checkout, and you get a panoramic view of your seat in the GameTime app before you buy it. GameTime will also credit you 100 to 10% of the difference if you find a lower price. So they have the lowest price guarantee, another great deal from GameTime. And GameTime also has your purchase covered by the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying all your tickets with GameTime. So download the GameTime app, create an account, use code CheckTheMic for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code CheckTheMic, CheckTheMic, for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. All right, man, let's go. Washington Commanders with the win over the Eagles. Impressive comeback win, 36-33. Late touchdown from Jaden Daniels to Jamison Crowder for the game winner. Eagles were up 27-14 at the start of the fourth quarter. Commanders kept fighting back. Also, Commanders overcame 5 turnovers to get this win. Just a wild win for the Commanders, who moved to 10-5. Eagles fall to 12-3 and fall a game back for that number 1 seed in the NFC.
There you go. Tweet from Mitchell Tischler. Commanders are the first team to win a game scoring 35 or more points whilst turning it over 5 times since 2010. So that is, 5 turnovers against the 1 seed, a team that's capable of earning the 1 seed or in the hunt for the 1 seed. With the number 1 defense in the NFL heading into this game is nuts. I mean, that should have precluded them from winning this game. And yet, okay, Kenny Pickett coming in for Jalen Hurts, who takes off in a scramble, goes to ground, gets his head smacked, and then gets sent to be evaluated, doesn't come back. Obviously, that's a huge part of what the Eagles are capable of doing. But they hung a ton of points against the number 1 defense in the NFL. And a ton of yardage as well. It's not like it was empty points that was set up by turnovers or whatever. I mean, they put 400 yards on what is arguably the best defense in the NFL.
They did. Look, I mean, there's going to be some luck that goes your way, too. I'll talk about that in a second. But, I mean, Jaden Daniels and what he did in this game, it wasn't one of those games where you go back and it's like, oh, he didn't miss a throw. He was pristine. Obviously, there were some bad ones in there. Early interception that he missed, and a late interception, which was maybe his worst decision, right? You're making a comeback attempt, forces one up. Ed Reed, Blankenship, always in the right place at the right time. He picks it off. It looks like the game-sealing interception for the Eagles. Eagles go down. They have a 3rd and 6. Pickett hits Devontae Smith wide open over the middle. That literally would have ended the game. He drops it, sure-handed Devontae Smith. Eagles settle for a field goal to go up 5. Commanders drive down and get the win. But I wanted to highlight some of the bad from Jaden Daniels just to set up the good, because obviously there's the game-winning touchdown, which was outstanding. If you look at the anticipation that he threw, it looks like wide open on broadcast, but he is throwing early into a spot, reading it out to Jamison Crowder. He had that one drive where they went 96 yards, big-time throw to De'Ami Brown out of the end zone, big-time throw to Terry McLaurin for a touchdown, scrambled on 4th and 4 to convert the 3rd down. And then the other scramble when they were down 13 points, and it's 4th and 11, and Jaden Daniels has the long scramble weaving through the Eagles defense. Just some unbelievable high leverage clutch plays from Jaden Daniels in this game.
The 4th and 11 scramble was so big. See, this is the other thing. Like, they also had a turnover on downs in this game. Like, they had 6 total turnovers, technically, if you give them that 4th down one as well. The 4th and 11 play was absolutely crucial to that comeback. I think it's a good thing to point out, because, like, coming out of this game, it's like, oh, look at Jaden Daniels, what he did at the end of the game against the number 1 defense in the NFL. Rookie of the year, wrapped up. Like Dan Orlovsky's firing off the tweet, presumably. Wrap it up. It's done. It's in the books. You're like, okay, but the drive before, which was his, can you take the lead on this drive, the game-winning attempt, he was awful. Like he missed on everything in that drive and then turned the ball over. And if Devontae Smith catches that football, the last thing we saw from Jaden Daniels in this game would have been absolutely melting down in the crunch situation. He gets a mulligan because Devontae Smith doesn't catch that football. He gets to do it over again. And on that drive, Kirk Cousins, on that drive, he's perfect. Like on that drive, he's fantastic. So what do you do with that from an analysis standpoint? I think you have to factor it in and say he basically had 2 shots at that game-winning drive, right? The first one was terrible and he missed. The second one, he was great and he hit it, right? But that's not the same as he had 1 shot and he hit it. He had 2 shots and he was 500 on them. Like that's, I think, a relevant part of this analysis.
It's the worst part about being logical analysts like you and I, Sam. It's just the worst part is that we have to not buy into all the fun and the hype. It doesn't take away from how good Jaden Daniels is. We dealt with this in early Andrew Luck years, right? We would be like, Andrew Luck had this knack for making fourth quarter comebacks. He had a special level of aggressiveness to him, throwing the ball down the field. He could make special throws. Luck never became that game manager type that I think people almost pictured coming out, never going to make mistakes. He's going to be this, Peyton Manning, perfect elite quarterback. He was more Favrean, right? It's like you always said, created a fire and then put it out himself. This was more that type of game for Jaden Daniels, right? Where the way I view it is we got an opportunity to see him bounce back from, what should have been a game-ending interception. So the same thing I said about Bryce Young earlier. You get the opportunity to see them bounce back from adversity. A Dan-O or former quarterback, they love that, right? Because that's a huge part of the position. And I would just say the big playability of Jaden Daniels. I think he has been incredibly efficient this year, underneath stuff, timely scrambles, whatever it might be. But then you have flip the field, downfield ability, his scrambling ability, which I think he just has a great knack for when to take off, how to navigate in the open field, as we saw in a couple of those scrambles. I think that's what this highlighted, right? Was the amnesia against a great defense. It's never going to be perfect, rarely going to be perfect. And you had this, it was a lucky opportunity to have another time to go for the game-winning touchdown. 9 plays, 57 yards, including that game winner to Crowder. So that's how I view it. I try, there's a balance between Jaden Daniels is the greatest thing we've ever seen, perfect game, and look, he got an extra opportunity, but he made do. And they scored 3 touchdowns in his last 4 drives.
Yeah, I don't want to be too negative on Jaden Daniels because he was really impressive in this game. And overall, I mean, he's been fantastic. The key plays in the game that were necessary to win, he made, right? It's just that he also made some that should have cost him the game. I was laughing because, I just said, look, Dano presumably has given him Rookie of the Year already. Right? Literally, as I'm doing that, there's a tweet where ESPN has a Dano clip where he says Jaden Daniels was the best player in the NFL this weekend. He is unflappable. So Dano doesn't remember the drive where he threw it away, only remembers the drive where he got it done, even though that one actually required a Philadelphia error to get the opportunity again.
I always try to put myself in their shoes. They just, especially former players, I think they see it differently. Like the big part, he bounced back from adversity. Like they weigh that extremely high. You and I are just, we were molded to care about every play, to not care about the narrative as much, to not care about the touchy-feely stuff. I think both things can be true. I wouldn't go so far to say he was the best player in the NFL when it took Devontae Smith dropping a wide open 3rd down to completely change your perception of him. But great job by Jaden Daniels. The Zacchaeus touchdown too. 12 men on the field, busted coverage, wide open for a 49-yard touchdown. There was some plays that went Washington's way in this one.
I mean, look, he made some really big plays. And again, I don't want to be too negative because him being able to have the performance that he had overall against the league's #1 defense and execute the comeback after having just screwed it up was a really important big boy moment. Like he did play really well. To say he was the best player in the NFL this weekend, I think is ridiculous. I mean, I don't even if you limit it to quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson was better. Bryce Young was better. Like, he wasn't the best player in the NFL this weekend. But, and again, I cannot emphasize enough, like, if Devontae Smith, a guy on the other side of the ball, catches a easy pass right into his hands, the last thing we saw from Jaden Daniels would have been a drive to win the game where he absolutely imploded and turned the ball over. Like, are you saying, if you are saying the same thing at that point, he's still the best player in the NFL this weekend, then we can have a conversation. If that changes your analysis, then what are we doing here?
Daniels finishes with 5 touchdown passes, 258 yards through the air, another 81 on the ground, including, like we talked about earlier, the 29-yard awesome scramble on 4th and 11. I get it. Jaden Daniels, those are the types of special moments, I think, also not so much in a play-by-play evaluation of this, but the star power that he shows going forward for Washington, should be absolutely thrilled about. I mean, at the end of the day, too, it's like that the game winner where he's anticipating and throwing to a spot, that might have been as impressive as anything to me. Yeah. So there was a lot of good stuff in there from Daniels. And then you can't talk about the Eagles without mentioning, once again, Jalen Hurts goes out with a concussion pretty early on. He's got 3 carries for 41 yards, goes 1 for 4 for 11 through the air, but he's hurt early. Kenny Pickett almost immediately throws a quick touchdown and then an interception to Frankie Louvu. So the good and the bad right away, but clearly they were limited. And after Saquon Barkley rattled off a 68-yard touchdown and people are like, oh, resuscitate the Barkley MVP case, the commander said not for the rest of the game. It was a whole bunch of 1 and 2 and 3 yard carries for Barkley. They held him in check after the 68-yarder. And so the Eagles became, much more one-dimensional with Pickett under center. One
of those farcical, aggregator accounts on Twitter was like, this is unbelievable. Saquon Barkley is he's got 100 and something yards in the first quarter. He's on pace for the 400 yards in the game, for 2,500 yards in the season. Like, blah blah blah. And you're like, what is this? Like, it's
block button. Block button, so you don't see it.
He had 109 yards in the first quarter and only 150 for the game overall. Like, yeah, they gave up a big play early, and it's like, here's MVP Saquon again. But they did at least slow that down or stop that happening over the course of the game. The other thing we got in this game is I feel like Marshawn Lattimore against A.J. Brown is going to be the new Marshawn Lattimore against Mike Evans. This was the first one-on-one battle that those guys had. It was an extensive one-on-one battle. Like, they let the two of them go against each other for a lot of the game. And it was a classic, Lattimore versus Evans game, right? Lattimore had 4 forced incompletions. On the other hand, he also gave up at least 3 penalties by being way too physical. I love the one-on-one matchups that Lattimore gets into against physical receivers is awesome to watch.
I just love those matchups generally, even if there's not a winner, right? It's not like this guy beat that guy. It's just, it was both, right? It was back and forth. They both had their wins. And I do love those matchups. Lattimore ends up leaving with a hamstring injury. We'll see what happens with him.
By the way, the Washington defense probably doesn't get enough credit. So we're all focusing on Kenny Pickett. There was a 3rd and 2 play where Lattimore breaks it up late in the down. Kenny Pickett got it to A.J. Brown, and then Lattimore, as they're going to the floor, swipes it away. There was another one where he gets Saquon Barkley deep down the field. Late in that play, Bobby Wagner desperately chasing it down. Old man Bobby chasing down Saquon Barkley on a deep pass is able to stay with it. And as Barkley doesn't quite catch it cleanly going to ground, Bobby Wagner is able to get it out. The Washington defense made some big plays when, if they hadn't, they wouldn't have had the opportunities to make those comebacks.
Yeah, that Wagner play was huge because Saquon kind of double clutched the catch, double caught it. If he catches that cleanly, even if Wagner breaks it up late, it's probably still a catch. He was laying on the ground for a little bit. So yeah, some huge plays by Washington's defense. Their linebackers in particular, Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, making some key plays. One last thing I wanted to highlight, if you go back and watch the Jaden Daniels game-winning touchdown, watch Milton Williams winning almost right off the snap for the Eagles. The timing, anticipation, and the fact that pressure was there, right? We talk a lot about how pressure is important, but if you're getting rid of the ball quickly, you can negate it. That's the other underrated part, and just an awesome job, I think, by Jaden Daniels, getting rid of the ball quickly to negate a pressure that is, right on him pretty quickly from Milton Williams up front from the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else on this one? Like I said earlier, Eagles fall a game behind the Vikings and the Lions. Their number one overall seed chances have dwindled quite a bit.
Yeah, big game for Washington to win, to kind of not quite secure it, but basically secure that playoff spot. And a statement win that they can hang. Like the narrative coming out of the last time they played Philadelphia was, okay, this was a reminder of where the standard is, right? Philadelphia is a team chasing the 1 seed. You're chasing the playoffs. If you make the playoffs, you're going to have to play teams like Philadelphia if you want to progress and make a Super Bowl or whatever. Last time it was like, okay, you're not at that level yet. You know, Philadelphia showed in the second half there's a gulf between those two teams. This time, okay, Kenny Pickett rather than Jalen Hurts, it's probably a different outcome. But still, Washington showed that they can go toe-to-toe with those 1 seed type teams.
When Kenny Pickett's at quarterback.
Whatever.
You're right. I agree. All right, let's go. Atlanta Falcons get the win over the New York Giants. It's 34-7. The Falcons are now, 8-7? Can I see? 8-7. I don't have the big screen in front of me here. Giants fall to 2-13. We did not know at the time. The Falcons now are in control of the NFC South due to the Bucs loss. So the Falcons control their own playoff hopes if they can win out here. And it's all Michael Penix Jr. The stat line was not great for Michael Penix Jr. due to the interception off of Kyle Pitt's hands. 18 of 27 for 202. No touchdowns, a pick, 73.4 passer rating. But I was impressed by Michael Penix Jr. And then Falcons aided by 2 pick sixes in this game to get to the 34 points.
Yeah, it's a weird game where, I mean, the stats probably across the board are not necessarily an accurate reflection of what happened. The Giants shot themselves in the foot repeatedly. Drew Lock is just not very good. On the other hand, like the single most defining statistical play on Michael Penix's box score is the interception, which was a fine pass that Kyle Pitts somehow threw towards a defensive back and turned it over. I think overall, like if you're coming out of this game, so it was a little Bryce Youngian in that some of his good plays were like there was some drops in there. He completed 66.7% of his passes, but his PFF adjusted completion rate, once you strip out the drops, et cetera, was 80.8%. So an 81% adjusted completion rate is very good, 7.5 yards per attempt. But I think more importantly, when you watch the tape, it's just this is what the offense is supposed to be again, right? With Kirk Cousins limited the way he is now physically. And again, I don't think Cousins is a complete write-off as a quarterback right now. I just think that because he's physically not where he used to be and maybe never will be again, they can't run everything in the offense. There are things that Kirk Cousins can't do anymore that have to be taken out of the playbook. There's nothing out of the playbook anymore with Michael Penix in there. Like they could open up like whatever sheets of paper were torn out of that playbook to make the offense that Cousins and Zach Robinson were running over the last few weeks. They're all back in the playbook again. So it opens up this offense again. It can be a much more honest reflection of what they want to run because nothing is off the table anymore.
You could almost see that from the first pass,
yeah.
Man. Like they ran a play action, little half roll. He's ripping deep comebacks. It got knocked away the first one, but rips a deep out later to Darnell Mooney. Some anticipation, deep outs. I was very impressed by Michael Penix. I thought the only question for me was a couple late checkdowns. He kind of hung a receiver out to try on a check down, missed another one. But just like in preseason, man, I thought he looked comfortable. I thought command was excellent. I was writing in my notes early that he was very aggressive, and sometimes I like to tell that story through average depth of target. Hey, this guy was aggressive. His ADOT was high. That's not the final story because of the second half. They threw a bunch of screens because of the game flow. Average depth of target was over 10 though in the first half when the game was, still more competitive. They were trying to take more shots, right? They were specifically saying, we have Mooney, we have London, we have all these guys to attack down the field. We're going to do it. So I was very impressed with Michael Penix Jr. Hit a bunch of backside, in cuts and everything. I thought he looked really good. And that, the Kyle Pitts drop, it wasn't even questionable. It was right in his hands, and he just kind of like served it up to the Giants for a red zone interception. I also thought Penix, man, he's got good. He already has a good arm. He zips it on a line. I mean, he's got just really good velocity on the ball. I saw him protecting his receivers on crossers over the middle of the field. Kind of, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, like the passes that look inaccurate, but he's like working it away from leverage, but still catchable. Little stuff like that was impressive. I'll give you one more thing. Our analytics friends focus a lot on the whole pressure to sack rate and how that's the thing to look at from college to the NFL. And so far, the last couple of years, Bo Nix has been really good at that. Anthony Richardson has been good at that. That's translated. Penix had a really low number, and you saw some of that in this game as well. He didn't get sacked, didn't take those negative plays, scrambled and turned it into like a 1 or 2 yard gain here and there, right? I mean, it was, look, we're not putting this in the Hall of Fame or anything like that, but I was very impressed by Michael Penix Jr.'s debut here.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you just looked at the box score, you would come out of that game saying, that probably wasn't an upgrade over Cousins. If you actually watch, though, like what it did to the offense in terms of putting everything back on the table again, the fact that he didn't really have a negative play in there, it was a Kyle Pitts negative play, not a Michael Penix negative play. Everything you saw from this game, if you're the Falcons, you would come out of that going, okay, yeah, we made the right call. Like this is the best option to win games right now. And okay, you're not necessarily going to get an indication of that against the Giants, who, if you just rolled out there and not, with anything, the Giants were going to do the job for you. But for the next couple of games, I mean, they're back in first position. They are now in control of the destiny again. One game has already put them back where they needed to go. Like it was looking like, maybe we've blown this opportunity for the playoffs. Well, they're right back in it now, and it looks like they do have the best quarterback option playing quarterback right now.
So the other thing to highlight here, so they have a tough run. They got to go to Washington and Carolina. So 2 road games for Atlanta, 2 tough games, right, against a competitive Panthers team and, of course, the Commanders that have 10 wins. But, yeah, Atlanta, if they win out, they're back in control. They win the NFC South. Penix does look like an upgrade. Bijan Robinson had 8 first downs and touchdowns. He has his first run, just a thing of beauty. That stuff, it is artwork. Again, I would send that to the Hall of Fame. The best 10 to 15 yard runs in the NFL from Bijan. So I thought he looked smooth again in this one. And then we glossed over, at least I did, Jesse Bates with a pick 6, Matthew Judon with a pick 6. I mean, that's the reason why the Falcons ran away with this. And then from a Giants perspective, they're 2-13, a game ahead of anyone else for the number 1 overall pick. And the further we get into them just getting beat up on week after week, I think the jobs could be more on the line maybe than I had even anticipated a few weeks ago if they keep losing like this.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a lot of these teams like, oh, they're dead and buried, but they're actually still fighting pretty hard. The Giants are the one team where you could at least argue that. I mean, we'll get to the Raiders later, but the Raiders won a game where it actually damaged them significantly in terms of draft position. Carolina is winning games looking like a feisty team right now. Like other teams are out here looking like they're still Tennessee. They're still fighting. They're dead and buried. They've got nothing to play for. They're coming back 30 points, trying to make it a game at the end. The Giants just look like they're checked out in large part. Except credit to Tyrone Tracy, spectacular catch at the back of the end zone, like showing the former wide receiver ability before he became a running back. The other thing that was funny, though, is Malik Neighbors, I think, is now up to 5 illegal shift penalties on the season, which is like that's one of those penalties that's it's like false start as a wide receiver, right? It's a total mental screw up that shouldn't be happening. It's a very controllable thing. Like, that's 2.5 times any other player. Are we correcting this? Are we just letting it slide because it's Malik Neighbors and he's really good? Like, what are we doing here?
It's like Ricky Pearsall not forming legally for the 49ers. What's the deal?
Right.
With these things.
5 illegal shift penalties. Are we just not addressing this in the meetings afterwards? Like, can we coach this?
It's bad. I mean, 5 or 6 weeks ago, I feel like I was apologizing a little bit for the Giants. Hey, they're more competitive. They're a bad team, but they're at least in a lot of games. They're not even competitive. And it's coincided with Daniel Jones being benched and clearly getting worse at quarterback. But Drew Lock hasn't played this poorly.
How much do you think Daniel Jones is loving the developments, though? He's sitting there in the Vikings practice squad as they try and chase down the 1 seed and go into the playoffs looking like, a great team. The vibes are awesome. Kevin O'Connell's, coach of the year candidate. Meanwhile, the Giants, as soon as they decided he was the problem, are utterly imploding without any quarterback play.
Jones is going to be the next guy that somebody says, okay, Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, Daniel Jones, come on down. You're next. And you can honestly make a case that Daniel Jones never played behind, say, even a top 20 offensive line.
Right.
So always bottom 10. And I'm being generous here, obviously. And never really had a good group of playmakers. You could argue this year was his best because of Malik Neighbors, and he was in and out of the lineup, and he's a rookie. So I'm hearing those conversations in front office offseason discussions in the coming weeks. I'm hearing them happening. Anything else on this one?
Nope.
All right, let's get to the 4:00 games. The biggest thing to talk about in this one is the number 2 pick implications. The Las Vegas Raiders get the win 19-14 over the Jacksonville Jags. They're both now 3-12, but the Raiders the Jags have the all-important tiebreaker for the number 2 overall pick. So I guess this thing's been rejigged on Tankathon. Jags are at 3 now.
I think last night changed things.
That changed things. So it doesn't, as of right now, doesn't matter a ton. But what does matter is the Raiders lost, right? So the Raiders go from 2 wins to 3. So they're now 6 in the current seeding. So to get back up to 1 or 2, they're going to need the Patriots, Jags, Titans, and Browns to all win while the Raiders lose out. So massive implications if the Raiders are looking at the Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward sweepstakes as far as the draft goes.
Yeah, I mean, Antonio Pierce was asked about it afterwards and essentially says, talk to Telesco. Like, that's not my problem. I'm there to win games.
That's true. That is true. That's the head coach's job to win.
But there is a way. I mean, look, we keep referencing the Eagles from a few years ago. Like, there is a way of orchestrating these things late in the season. Like the Eagles, and they took crap for it. Like, they effectively threw a game, not by saying go out there and play badly, but they're like, uh-oh, we're in danger of winning this game. We're going to pull the starter at quarterback and put in the backup to effectively ensure that they lost a game that maintained a higher draft position, and ultimately a bunch of dominoes fell, and that's part of the reason the Eagles are where they are. Obviously, none of the players for the Raiders want to tank a game. The coach doesn't want to tank a game. But at this point, somewhere in the building, there needs to be like a recognition that losing this game in particular is going to be quite damaging because we need a quarterback. And for the last few years, we have been the team without a quarterback when the musical chair stops, right? And having the number 2 overall pick would help that in a year where there might only be 2 available good quarterbacks. So I don't know what you do about it necessarily, but it's definitely a damaging win late in the season for the Raiders.
I don't know what you do either because we've talked about Antonio Pierce potentially being on the hot seat.
Yeah.
Obviously, this was part of a lawsuit issue previous years with the Dolphins. Like, you can't actually do this, even though you know the implications. It was funny, though, at one point where the Raiders were up 13-7, and then it almost felt like, some calls were made. They miss a field goal to go that would have put them up 2 scores, and then a busted coverage leads to a 62-yard touchdown for Brian Thomas Jr. But, yeah, the Raiders kept playing. Aiden O'Connell made a few plays on their game-winning drive. Raiders, they're still playing hard for Pierce, and Jags not looking good. I thought Mac Jones missed a ton. So Brian Thomas Jr. finishes with 9 catches for 132. He got overthrown probably 2 or 3 times in addition to that. Andy had a drop on one of Mac Jones' best throws. I mean, Brian Thomas Jr. was open enough to have like 300 yards in this game.
Again, I mean, this isn't the first time we said that this season.
Yeah, he looks really good overall.
He looks spectacular. I mean, genuinely.
Including the drop, right? Like, I'm the guy that's like, the more important thing is getting open deep, and if you drop it, that's fine. You're going to catch the other, 8, the next 8, but getting open deep is tough to do. And Brian Thomas, looks really smooth, fast, and really good.
We're not through their rookie seasons yet, but if I was reworking the wide receiver draft order at this point, I would have him 1. Like, he would be above Neighbors on my list at this point. Like, he looks absolutely spectacular and in all areas, like without limits. He's not just a guy who is a primary deep threat who's developed some other areas of his game and is useful there. Like, he is a complete threat at wide receiver that looks like the best receiver from that draft class. Neighbors, I think, is the only other guy that's even in the conversation. I think Thomas has been more impressive than Neighbors. Like, he looks phenomenal, and the amount of yardage left on the table by quarterbacks missing him this season, even when Lawrence was there, is staggering.
Yeah, and so we'll have to bring Chris Sims on the show and call him out for having Neighbors over Brian Thomas Jr. That's what we'll do.
Right. The ridiculous take of having Malik Neighbors ahead of Brian Thomas in
we'll
the correct order
Sims
was clearly the
we'll
reverse.
get Sims for his victory lap show to celebrate Brian Thomas Jr. in the season that he's had. Brock Bowers now officially number 2 as far as rookie tight end yardage goes, 11 catches for 99 yards for him. Look, these are just jokes, but there was a pass in the middle of that little tankathon few plays that the Raiders had. Missed field goal, busted coverage. Aiden O'Connell comes up and bounces a pass to the flat, and Brock Bowers, instead of it bouncing, scoops it up for the catch. Incredible catch by Bowers. Almost say, no, we're not tanking, saving the Raiders. But yeah, so the implications for this, if it is truly Shadur Sanders and Cam Ward at the top of the draft and the Giants are in line to get one of those guys, this literally could mean this game earns the Jags or the Patriots or the Titans or the Browns, a team that's going to have to trade down with the Raiders. This game could have cost the Raiders extra draft capital if they want to go up and get a quarterback at number 2 overall. So that's what we just watched here in week 16 of a game between teams that combined with 5, have combined for 6 wins this season.
Yeah, they might theoretically have to buy back the draft pick that they could have had anyway if they just lost this game from Jacksonville, if they have to end up trading to go get a quarterback. Just on Brock Bowers for a second, you got people are wrapping up. They're like, "Oh, that Jaden Daniels is rookie of the year, just cemented it with that game." I do think that it is worth making the point that what Brock Bowers is doing is also historically, essentially unprecedented. And for some reason, and I've seen certain specific people doing this, but people are driving this narrative that because Brock Bowers, there's a low average depth of target attached to his targets, therefore he's like late stage career Jason Witten, right? Where he's just catching a series of endless 5-yard out routes that are marginally capable plays. This is the play that you just referenced is why that's a bullshit argument. Number one, he's got 3 drops on the season on 100 whatever it is targets. But he's made yes, his average depth of target is less than some tight ends. It's also right in the middle of the range. It's not like he's got we're not talking about an abnormally low, Jimmy Garoppolo type of average depth of target level. He's got a normal tight end average depth of target. And he's dealing with a couple of pretty bad quarterbacks that give him a bunch of targets like that one that involve having to do spectacular things with it. So, yeah, some of the plays are shorter and closer to the line of scrimmage than other tight ends. On the other hand, they're not as accurate, so he's having to make spectacular adjustments and then making plays after the catch. Brock Bowers, to me, is rookie of the year, and at the very minimum is in a conversation with Jaden Daniels where the only thing that you can separate them on is value, right? If you want to separate Jaden Daniels and Brock Bowers, the way you do it is one is a quarterback, and I think there's more value attached to that. I don't think you can do it by just, here's the performance in abstract terms, and anyone that thinks that is being ridiculous.
I'm with you on the Bowers discourse. The one thing I think people say about quarterback, though, it's not just value, because value is not in the rookie of the year name.
Right.
They say it's a tougher position to play, right? So it's a tougher position to hit the ground running, which is true. And I think that ends up being the tiebreaker for Jaden Daniels. I don't think Bo Nix was ever honestly in the conversation over the last few weeks. He has not been nearly as consistent as Jaden Daniels or Bowers from start to finish. His would have been if their team record was better. You would have said, well, impressed by Bo Nix, but it's Jaden Daniels or Brock Bowers. I wouldn't hate either one, and I would not argue with you either way, depending on how you decide to go.
But I don't even think that point is true, that it's harder for a rookie quarterback to perform really well than it is a rookie tight end. If you look at the number of rookie quarterbacks that have hit the ground running and been wow, that guy's actually really good right out of the gate. C.J. Stroud, Jaden Daniels this year. I mean, the Andrew Luck year, RG3, it's happened reasonably frequently, right? Brock Bowers is doing something that may never have happened before. I mean, Mike Ditka, whenever the hell his season was, is the previous year where anybody has done this degree of hitting the ground running. Tight end is actually a position that's freakishly difficult to hit the ground running in historically, if you want to use production terms. So even that argument that actually what Jayden Daniels is doing is a more difficult thing, I don't think holds up to scrutiny. Literally the only separator to me is quarterback has way more value and he's winning games, and Brock Bowers is on a 3-win team plugging away in obscurity, and that's the differentiator. But as you said, nowhere in the award is that relevant, right? This is not the MVP. This is simply Rookie of the Year. And that's where I think it becomes very difficult to not give it to Brock Bowers.
You should send an email out to your other fellow voters.
I can't. They now send out those emails with the BCC, so I can't see who the other 49 voters are.
I gotcha.
Previous years, I would have been able to do that. I would have been able to lobby on behalf of Brock Bowers, but sadly no longer.
So we'll be referencing this game throughout draft season, looking back on Raiders, Jags, of course. A few more games to get through, but first, let's make your holidays bigger and better with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. In fact, you can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. So you can join now because this holiday season, Prize Picks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's all guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. And my lineup we had a good day yesterday with the Josh Allen, less than his rushing yards. We got Terry McLaurin. I was a little scared of Terry McLaurin late with the Commanders' comeback, but he stayed less than his receiving projection. And so we had a good week for my lineup hitting this week. So you guys can play along as well. Download the app today. Use code CheckTheMic to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CheckTheMic. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Minnesota Vikings get the win over the Seattle Seahawks. Another impressive win by the Vikings, who moved to 13-2. Seahawks fall to 8-7. So the Seahawks game behind the Rams in the NFC West, and the Vikings, one of 2 teams at 13-2 in the NFC. And as we mentioned earlier, if they win next week, set up for the NFC North and potentially number 1 seed on the line in Week 18 against the Lions.
Yeah, impressive win, I think, for Minnesota, given particularly what Seattle was able to bring to the table. Same thing, 12-play touchdown drive. Like, the Vikings continue to absolutely cook on script, that 15-play opening script that teams talk about. The Vikings is as good as anybody in the NFL. I mean, they dominated early. It looked like they were going to have real success. Like, the Seahawks were struggling in that first half, and then before halftime, there was a really important sequence. Seattle got a touchdown to DK Metcalf over Gilmore. Those 2 guys were really going at each other throughout the game.
What a battle.
Not just like a Marshawn Lattimore versus A.J. Brown physical battle, but they were like jawing at each other for the entirety of the game. It was fascinating. And then, the Vikings made some plays, but late in the game, Seattle's defense was doing a really impressive job at getting pressure on Darnold, and the face mask that wasn't the last time, they actually gave it to them this time, extended the Vikings drive, touchdown over the top, and boom.
It's just working backwards. That game-winning touchdown, Sam Darnold to Justin Jefferson, the number of times this year where I come away more impressed by Sam Darnold, it's week after week. And I think if you look at the totality of the season, Darnold starting hot, everybody points back, us included, to that Jaguars game where he almost lost to this team that's, slated to pick number 3 overall. And it was because of him. And since that point, he has been outstanding. Look, there's some bad plays in there, as like anyone else, right? His ability to bounce back, make plays in the fourth quarter, and that Jefferson play, stepping through the pocket, hitting the hole, kind of back shouldering it away from the safety, just unbelievable stuff by Sam Darnold. Other little plays too. I think your guy Mark Sanchez highlighted a little. He either changed the route or the concept to Justin Jefferson to the deep out. Sam Darnold is throwing pristine deep out cuts. You're talking that 10 to 15 yard range this year, intermediate out, we'll say, and he puts it right on Jefferson after changing the play. It's like, I saw our friend Matt Collar talking about this, the idea of, well, Kevin O'Connell's the QB whisperer, and he's, and so like a lot of that stuff is true, right? Like we talk a lot about quarterbacks being associated with a coach, and it's the scheme that gets the best out of that guy. I don't think it's just the scheme; it's the totality of these things, right? If you're going to give Kevin O'Connell credit, or give him the proper credit for Sam Darnold's career year here, it's not just he called good plays. It's that he got Sam Darnold to play with this level of confidence, to play with this level of aggressiveness at the right times, to have the ability to bounce back from negative plays, to come back with positive plays as consistently as he has. When we talk about scheme fit and all these things, it's not just the plays, the mentality. So whoever gets credit for that, Sam Darnold ultimately gets credit for it, but O'Connell, the system, the playmakers, there's so much to like about Minnesota's offense with Sam Darnold running the show and continuing to make big plays in the clutch.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that before, right? Like one of the things that Kevin O'Connell did was rewire Kirk Cousins, right? He changed the way Kirk Cousins plays the game, and even if it was only temporary, it's an effect that massively goes beyond just play calling, as you said, or scheme, diagnosing and drawing up and all that kind of stuff. Like he is able to change the behavior of quarterbacks in addition to just making them play better, and that's why. I tweeted this out. Like Darnold, for his career with the Jets, had 13 wins. Darnold has 13 wins already with 2 games left to play this regular season for the Vikings. It's a different version of Sam Darnold, and maybe it only works as long as he's attached to Kevin O'Connell. But the point is, it works. And again, like for the majority of the game, I think the Vikings were okay on offense. But late in this game, in the fourth quarter, that Mike McDonald defense was really dialing up pressure. Darnold had 8 dropbacks in the fourth quarter, and 5 of them he was under pressure in. So they got a ton of pressure late in the game. The stunts were working. They were causing problems. Okay, they caught a break with the face mask, extending the drive when it could have ended it if the face mask wasn't there. But Darnold was under duress in the most critical portion of that game and then stood up to deliver that touchdown pass deep down the field to Jefferson.
Isn't that what the evidence seems to be showing here? We always talked about Shanahan and his, it's his system and it's his scheme, and he's look at all these open throws that Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy have, and you always dialed up, or you always thought of Shanahan as the schematic genius that's giving the quarterbacks the open throws to these really good playmakers. I think we're 2 quarterbacks into Kevin O'Connell here in Minnesota, and you could honestly, he was there with Stafford on the Super Bowl run. You could say, look, they also maximized Stafford's ability. That I used to joke, how do you bottle up great aggressive Stafford? And they did with the Rams. Isn't that where the evidence is pointing towards with Kevin O'Connell right now? It's the X's and O's. Like, I'm not taking away from the play calling, but certainly it's recalibrating, maximizing the potential of these quarterbacks. I just love it. And again, so impressed by Darnold. And then the way Minnesota's passing attack works, it was a Justin Jefferson game where he goes 10 catches for 144. It had been Jordan Addison in recent weeks. It had been TJ Hawkinson a few weeks ago. Just so many weapons to have to account for Minnesota.
Yeah, I was having this discussion on Twitter over the weekend with Golick Jr. and I think Danny Helfitz. Is that his name? Helfitz? I've never remember how to pronounce that guy's second name. From the Ringer. That record that the Chiefs have now of consecutive one-score victories overtakes a mark set by the 07 Patriots, I think, like the dynastic Patriots team. So, and you add that to the idea that the Chiefs do seem to be able to turn it on when they want. Like this is a team that's learned how to win now. They've back-to-back Super Bowls, working on a third. They're not fazed by a random game in mid-December, when things are on the line. It does seem to indicate that there is a skill to winning these one-score games, which previously I think was just dismissed as variance and noise. And, sometimes you win those games, sometimes you don't. And when Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings won 11 of them in a season or whatever a couple of years ago, we were like, well, that's a number that's going to regress next year. Like, yeah, they overachieved this year, but, next year they'll come back down to earth. And they did a little bit, but this is now the second season where Kevin O'Connell is putting together this run of consecutive, consistent, one-score victories. Late in the game, when things are tight, it's uncomfortable, but generally speaking, the Vikings seem to come out on the right side of these games, and even the ones where they're not, it's like there was a blown face mask call in their own end zone, right, that cost them that game. Like maybe they would have won that one as well. So maybe we are starting to look at this and saying, Kevin O'Connell is one of those coaches that has an ability to consistently manufacture victories in tight one-score close games. And for a team like Minnesota vying for the 1 seed, potentially going into the playoffs against a couple of other very good teams in the NFC, like this might be why they are a real contender, not just a team that's going to, get there and not really threaten the Super Bowl.
I will add to that stat a little bit. I mean, we use the QB comeback, fourth quarter comeback stat for quarterbacks. O'Connell has been a part of Matthew Stafford getting a ton. Stafford always had a ton, but he had a ton in 21 with the Rams. And then Cousins goes from one of the worst to one of the best for over a 2-year period, making fourth quarter comebacks. Now he's got Darnold doing it. It's the first time I think I've seen a coordinator, coach, whatever, really attached to that type of stat or trend, right? That it's usually quarterback driven and it travels with the quarterback. And now we're seeing, KOC maybe defy the odds here a little bit and him being the driver for a lot of that stuff. So from Seattle, I think from their perspective, another game where the game flow gets out away from them. They can't run the ball effectively. Geno Smith has to force some passes. It's very Baker Mayfield-ish, right? There's a roller coaster ride. There's a dime to DK Metcalf for a touchdown. There's a dime to Jackson Smith and Jigba for a touchdown. Always feels like a heavyweight fight with Geno Smith in Seattle because they put so much on him. Drop back pass game over and over and over again, and then they're down 3 with under a minute left. Game-ending interception. Geno Smith, slight miscommunication there as well, but he's got to kind of force one under quick pressure once again from Minnesota. So everything kind of falling apart there when they just needed to drive down and at least get a game-tying field goal attempt.
Yeah, really impressive. There was a spin move right up the middle for the Vikings pass rush on that play that really put him under that quick pressure. I don't know what DK Metcalf is running on that play. I mean, he sort of gives up, I think, because it looks like, it's covered. There's a guy there that's going to be a problem, even if DK runs out 100% and puts himself in the right place. But yeah, bad play sort of institutionally from the Seahawks offense that basically cost them that game late on. Generally, it was a sort of standard Geno game where like a lot of it was really impressive. Some of those passes to JSN, to DK Metcalf were really, really impressive. A couple of mistakes in there. Dallas Turner's interception. Like, you remember you made this point at draft time, right? Like we were talking about the big 3 in terms of pass rushers, Dallas Turner, Jared Verse, Laiatu Latu. And for the Vikings in particular, with this Flores defense that, deploys players that go everywhere, whether it's rush the pass or drop into coverage, he's much more of an Andrew Van Ginkel type of player that can exist in coverage as well versus Jared Verse or Laiatu Latu. And here we go. Like he had a sack last week, right? And here he goes popping up in legitimate coverage, not just like,
legit off-ball linebacker snap for Dallas Turner here for the
not just like dropping off the line into a hook curl window and the ball's thrown right at him. Like he was in coverage legitimately as a linebacker and breaks on the ball and gets an interception. So, Turner's had a relatively underwhelming rookie season so far, but him coming on late in the year and into the playoffs would be a huge development for this Vikings team.
Oh, especially the way they're getting more and more comfortable just deploying a bunch of different defensive ends, rolling out a whole bunch of different packages and everything. So, yeah, that was an impressive play by Turner. So they've got the Packers and Lions left here.
Yep.
The Vikings. So it's not easy get even to get to the Lions game, but they're hosting the Packers and then they play Detroit in Week 18, battling for that NFC North and, more importantly, the number 1 overall seed.
It's not easy, but critically, the Packers game is at home, and overall, they control their own destiny. I mean, they are the one team. I mean, Detroit does as well, I guess, but they control the 1 seed. Like, if the Vikings win out, they are the 1 seed. So it's 2 extremely tough division games. One of them is at home, and the other one is the game that would decide it, theoretically.
Anything else on this one?
No, other than, again, it feels uncomfortable every time they do it, but at some point, you probably have to credit the Vikings for this being a skill to win these one-score games and consistently get over the line.
All right, let's go Miami Dolphins 29, San Francisco 49ers 17. Dolphins moved to 7-8. Again, one of those AFC teams just on the outside looking in, needing some help for the wild card spot there. Niners officially eliminated from the playoffs with a 6-9 record now with the loss. Game was close, back and forth. A couple weird plays that swung this, but Devin Achane with a huge game, including as the Dolphins were running out the clock, they were up 5, 50-yard touchdown to seal it to get the 12-point win.
Yeah, Miami kept themselves alive, and I think that's about it. But perfectly, as we said on the reaction show last night, it doesn't change any narratives because the 49ers knew coming into this game they were already eliminated. With the loss, they can't have a winning record this season, so they fit perfectly into the bucket of the team that Miami should win. They should beat
Dolphins
teams.
Beat bad teams.
They should beat teams that have losing records outside of the playoffs, and that's exactly what happened here.
Achane had a huge game for the Dolphins with that 50-yarder. He gets to 120 yards rushing. Also caught 6 passes for 70 yards. Jalen Waddle was injured. So there's a lot of screens, to Achane and everything. Also just ran a dig route like Jalen Waddle would and caught that over the middle, which was great. So he had a huge game. The usual Jonnu Smith high efficiency game for Miami. And then the Niners, I thought they showed flashes, right? Like Deebo Samuel, the week 2 of squeaky wheel game for Deebo Samuel helped you with your prize picks lineup before, CeeDee Lamb let you down.
CeeDee Lamb.
But
sure.
Samuel had some throwback type of plays in this one. George Kittle, I think he looks as fast as ever. Some of the plays he was making yesterday and maybe over the last few weeks, but just not enough, man. They're just Niners just too beat up.
Yeah. So this is fascinating to me because, ostensibly these teams are running, the same offense or very similar, close cousins. And they both have, I think, personnel problems on the offensive line. But on the one hand, as we said for the last few weeks, you've got Tua with the fastest average time to throw in the NFL, getting rid of the ball with instant quickness, anticipation, just firing the ball out. On the other hand, you've got Brock Purdy, whose special skill within this offense, the reason he's looked so spectacular for most of his career, is that when the Shanahan offense runs out of ideas, when it breaks down, Purdy's able to extend plays and does his best work late in the down when the scheme has run out of answers. Where I think that becomes an issue is when the offensive line is a mess, the way it's been for the majority of this year, still no Trent Williams out there. Well, in this game, you've got Tua with an average time to throw of 2.16 seconds, according to PFF. That's lightning fast, right? That's where it was when the Jets couldn't get any pass rush. And where's the Jets pass rush? 2.1 seconds, you're not going to see a pass rush. So ball's out, 2.1 seconds for Tua on average. He looks pretty good. He's making some plays. The ball average time to throw for Brock Purdy, 2.74 seconds. And for a ton of this game, it's like he's running for his life. He's under pressure a way more because of all that. Miami's defense has got 4 times the volume of pressure than the 49ers were able to apply. And there's just so many plays where it's not working right now. So we're going to come out of this season. Nick Wright is already laying the groundwork for these takes in the offseason, right? What does Purdy's contract look like now? How damaging was this? Do you even move on from him? And I think a big part of it is he just didn't have the platform this year that he's had previously.
Yeah. Offense changed, offensive line changed, playmakers in and out. It's going to be an interesting discussion because you're like, well, if Brock Purdy can only perform with George Kittle and Deebo and Ayuk and McCaffrey and the offensive line, then what do you want to pay for, right? That's where the discussion's going to go.
This is why, I always refer to that credit pie, right? This is why the credit pie becomes important. It's not important when everybody's there and they're all coexisting in the offense and everything is great and the offense is cooking like the best offense in the NFL. From that standpoint, it doesn't matter who the credit belongs to because as long as they're all there functioning together, the output is the same. Where it becomes really important is now, where suddenly it's not working as well as it did previously. And now you need to diagnose who is bringing the most credit or the most production to the table because all of a sudden you have a $60 million contract. You're staring down the barrel of a $60 million contract to Brock Purdy, and you don't know if he's worth 60% of the pie or if he's worth 40% of the pie or 20% of the pie. Now you need to figure out how much is he worth because the contract is about to change everything. So when things don't go as well, and this is the thing, some quarterbacks are able to overcome everything, right? Some quarterbacks are a little bit more like elite running backs, right? Where if everything's great, they can be the value add on the top, and they might be the perfect piece of the puzzle that turns you into a juggernaut. But if you take away a couple of pieces and the thing starts to collapse, they're not able to do what Josh Allen, say, is able to do and overcome that and still have the thing looking like the best offense in the NFL, even when there's some weaknesses there. And that might be where we are with Brock Purdy, this ridiculous discussion that's been from like day one of him being in the NFL. How much is him? How much is Shanahan? How much is the receiving core? For the first time, there's been some cracks in that overall offense, and now we don't know how much of this is, like, how good is Brock Purdy? How much should you be paying him? And I don't know that anybody knows the answer to that question now.
I mean, and Tua made his $50+ million on the other side, and you've got similar questions, but just from a different angle.
Right.
It's not a without question. It's a wit. Can we beat Kansas City and Buffalo and Baltimore? Can we actually beat good teams? Because we haven't done it yet. And they didn't prove it in this game either. They didn't beat a good team. They beat a 6-win team in the Niners, and that's what they do, the Dolphins. No, good win by the Dolphins, and Devin Achane again. Really nice game from him. Anything else on this one?
No.
Let's go Buffalo Bills with the win over the New England Patriots. 24-21 is 14-point spread, but the Patriots come out smoking. 14-0 early on, dominated the first quarter plus of this game. And Buffalo comes back, though. James Cook, a couple big runs, including a 46-yarder to get them back into it.
Dude, such a stupid game. 14.5-point spread in Buffalo's
You got
favor.
any? My dad's coming over. Do you have any Patriots takes?
Papa Ralph is here.
My dad was over here predicting. This is Big Steve over here.
Papa Ralph.
He was predicting.
Sam, how are ya?
He predicted the fake punt from the Patriots
All right.
yesterday.
I says they're three and whatever they are, 12, and they of course they're gonna fake it.
There you
Right?
go.
Yeah.
He says I could get a job making 500 million a year.
Yeah, you could do it.
somewhere, right?
So say Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas to everybody, and
like-
Happy New Year.
I mean, you hang
Now I
in
can
there,
go
you could
back
get
to sleep.
Gerard Mayo's job the way the season's going.
Sam said maybe you get Gerard Mayo's job by the end of the year.
Oh yeah, I hope so. Gotta get rid of him. Definitely. Go Pats.
So Drake May hits Keyshawn Butte with a beautiful throw early on. Patriots came out. They were playing hard. They were smoking, but Bills battled back. Bills are beat up on defense too, man. A lot of injuries, but they had to survive this one, and they did.
Yeah, that's the one thing. Like, people were saying, does this game damage your perception of what Buffalo is as, a number one seed chasing juggernaut type of team? Overall, no. I think my initial reaction would be, look, it's a division game late in the year, December, Buffalo, New England, weird things happen in these games. Where I think there might be a kernel of concern, though, is, Kyer Elam, their former number one draft pick, is a guy that got beaten out immediately by a 6th-round rookie in the same draft class and has subsequently been languishing on the bench as somebody that doesn't play football for the Bills. When he's out there, it's a target. I mean, they went after Kyer Elam, and Kyer Elam gave up plays. Like, that is a way of attacking this defense that didn't exist previously. So they are a little bit more banged up than they were earlier in the season, and that does expose some vulnerabilities. So, now after one game, I'm not massively concerned. If the next 2 games against the Jets and the Patriots are similar struggles, maybe I will change that.
Yeah, and that's a couple weeks ago where they gave up 44 to the Rams and everything. I'm not sure I'm there yet. I'm not sure exactly also where they're going to be from an injury perspective. But
right.
Again, I want to reiterate, that's what happened last year. Like, not to take anything away from the Chiefs. Again, right, they win everything.
Mm-hmm.
But they played a depleted Dolphins defense. They played a completely depleted Bills defense, a full Ravens team. But it is about health at this time. A team like the Chiefs are getting Marquise Brown back, while the Bills are losing defensive players. Those are the fine, lines and margins we're going to be talking about come playoff time, and who's going to actually, represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. So, there was definitely a point in this game too where it was kind of like throwback Josh Allen, right? He chucked one into double coverage into the end zone for a pick, threw another one for a dropped interception. It wasn't full, as they're saying, he's doing a better job taking care of the ball and this and that. True, but in this game in particular, right? It was nice that they could get a 46-yard touchdown to get back into the game, but he started to force a couple passes in there, including the pick.
He's had games previously in his career where, it's like there's a realization, things go wrong, and then there's a realization that he needs to bring them back, like individually. He needs to be Superman again. It's time to flip the switch. Even if this wasn't a game where we were expecting to need Superman, now we need it. It's time to flip that switch. Josh Allen needs to take over. And most of the time he does. I mean, this is why he's the MVP frontrunner at this point. But there are games where it's almost like he feels the weight of that pressure, and there's a mistake here or there. He's trying to do too much almost, and it almost has the reverse effect. Like he actually continues digging the hole that they've dug themselves already. This felt like one of those games early. I mean, a big part of the turnaround was Gregory Rousseau detonating a quick swing pass to Ramondre Stevenson out of the backfield and turning that into a defensive score, like a play for Buffalo instead. It was a lot more of one of those games where it just didn't quite work for Josh Allen. Okay, they got the win in the end, but the Rams game a couple of weeks ago, they lost that game, but it enhanced Josh Allen's MVP case. This was one where they got a win, but it actually, I think, damaged his MVP case. This was not MVP Josh Allen.
I don't see people talking about it. I don't know. It's just a game against the Patriots.
Because nobody had their MVP game. That's the problem with this, right?
Lamar did, but
Lamar did, but it didn't count because Derrick Henry also did, right? So he can't get all the MVP juice because Derrick Henry stole it in the same game.
Anyway, the big play was that backward swing pass from deep in their own territory. The Patriots muff that, and Bills get a touchdown off that. Again, that ends up being a huge difference in the game. Drake May with a touchdown late to get them back within the field goal, but the Bills recover the onside kick. So you're right. I mean, these games happen. Sorry about the chair. These games happen every year in the NFL, right? Where a 3-win team takes it. Sometimes, division rival, they give it a good game, but the Bills needed to survive to at least keep their number one seed aspirations. That would involve the Chiefs losing twice,
right,
to the Steelers and the Broncos, but it's still alive if the Bills win out and the Chiefs lose their next couple games.
Which is doable. I mean, the Chiefs or the Broncos and the Steelers are two games that could go against Kansas City. They probably won't, but it's at least on the table.
Is this the last? Yeah, it's the last of the 4 o'clock games. Anything else on this one? Let's see. Where's New England currently number 2 in the draft order right now? Again, one of 5 teams with the 3 wins. They're one of the teams that has a quarterback as well.
Right.
So the fun offseason debate with them, if it's them or Jacksonville who have quarterbacks, do you take a Travis Hunter? Do you take an offensive lineman? Do you take a great player? Or do you trade down to a team that's a QB needy team? It does feel like New England, with all of their holes, should be considering the trade down in that situation.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. You would expect it to in this game, given the offensive line that they were going up against, but another game where it was a big performance from Buffalo's pass rush. Rousseau, we talked about, with one of those game-changing plays. Ed Oliver, again, was really disruptive. Von Miller, has shown up for a few games this season where he looks potentially devastating. They've got some players that can do a lot of damage up front, and they'll probably need them in the playoffs.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Buffalo. If they can get healthy on the back end, the Rasul Douglases, Matt Milanos, if those guys are healthy, clicking, ready to go for the playoffs, that's when they're at their most dangerous, especially where that defensive front is capable of playing in Buffalo.
Yep.
Good. All right, before we get to Sunday Night Football, I got to tell you about our friends over at Harry's. The holiday special is over, but Harry's still has a great deal for all of you. So go try their products right now. Sam and I love their products. Get the nice smooth shave with the Harry's 5-blade razor. Love the look. It's sleek. It's a nice handle, easy to get the replacements. German engineered blades. They're made in their own factory. They stay sharp longer. You've got customizable delivery options for scheduled refills for as low as $2. That's half what you pay for the other big brands. You get that 5-blade razor, weighted handle, foaming shave gel, and a travel cover for just $3 over at harrys.com/checkthemic. Sam, did you have something to add to this? You looked like you wanted to add to the hat.
I was so obviously the beard is growing back since Movember, but you got to get that neckline. That's all Harry's right there.
You going Harry's neckline now?
Harry's neckline.
It looks It looks sharp.
5 blades.
I mean, it looks smooth, not sharp.
5 blades.
I love it. So get the edge on your shave with Harry's. Get started with a $13 trial set for just $3 at harrys.com/checkthemic. That's harrys.com/checkthemic for a $3 trial set. All right, man, what do we have?
Sunday night football. Right?
That's it, right? Just double checking everybody's work. The Dallas Cowboys get the win 26-24 over the Bucs. Bucs fall to 8-7, officially second place in the NFC South now. So they need to win out. They need the Falcons to at least lose a game here over these next couple of weeks. Cowboys move to 7-8. Pretty fun game. Our old boss Chris was chuckling for the entire second half. When he chuckles, you know some good stuff is happening.
A lot of chuckles. Just
laughing at the hard hits and some of the spectacular plays in this game. And there were fun back and forth battle on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, it really was. It was a great game. Really fun game to watch. Like you said, it did feel a bit like a playoff performance where the hitting intensity just ratchets up, and these teams were both really, really fighting hard. Now for Tampa Bay, that made total sense, right? They're battling to keep control of the division. Dallas, it makes no sense because they're done. They were like 49ers. They were eliminated going into this game. They had nothing to play for, and yet they went out there playing like their lives depended on it. Chris and the broadcast were making a big deal out of this is a team that seems to want to play to keep Mike McCarthy his job, to keep him in the gig, and they were definitely playing like that. I have a question for you, though. Are you ready yet to apologize to Skip Bayless for mocking his take that Cooper Rush was better than Dak Prescott?
No.
Why not?
Because Cooper Rush is not better than Dak Prescott. I will apologize for mocking Skip for not even acknowledging the idea that it could be true. I will still continue to say there's no way that Cooper Rush is better than Dak Prescott.
Okay.
But I will acknowledge that Cooper Rush has played some good ball these last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
By the way, I mean, I don't know where the PFF grade ends up or just my own brain grade ends up. He had what could have been the most disastrous interception in the NFL last night. So let's not forget that. But I've been impressed with Cooper Rush, more impressed with CeeDee Lamb. But
sure.
Yeah, I've been impressed with Cooper Rush the last couple weeks. So no apology to Skip.
No apology. I'd like to take this opportunity to apologize to not Skip Bayless. It's a pretty good point, right? Cooper Rush was playing really good football, but then with the game on the line late with like 6 minutes left, trying to protect the lead, he just throws it right to a linebacker, like straight to him, and the dude stone hand drops it. Massive play. I mean, 3 insane plays in this game. There's that one Tampa Bay doesn't come up with, and then there's 2 plays where the Dallas defense straight up just takes the ball away from Tampa Bay receivers. The one was who made the play deep down the field into the end zone, the McMillan play? Was that Bland as well?
That took the final play?
No. The deep shot to McMillan.
Jordan Lewis.
Jordan Lewis, that was
interception.
So Jordan Lewis just straight up takes the ball away from Jalen McMillan on a bomb into the end zone. That was huge play. Like that would have given Tampa Bay a touchdown. Instead, turnover. And then the very final play is Deron Bland. Baker makes a miracle play to get out of pressure, gets it off to Rachaad White, who actually starts fighting through, gaining some yardage on the play. And then again, as they're going to ground, Bland just rips the ball away. Like those are genuinely 2 of the best defensive plays that have been made by anybody this season. And Dallas needed both of them to survive this game.
Yeah, let's highlight the end of that game because the Bucs get within 2. It's 26-24. The Cowboys could seal the deal with a first down. Basically, they run a little quick pass out of nowhere. Vita Vea. I mean, not out of nowhere. He's dropping into coverage, and again, Chris and Mike, they do a great job. Just I think every week breaking down what's happening in the game, and they were highlighting Todd Bowles' schemes and how often they're just zooming a defensive tackle across the field into coverage, and sometimes they get exploited. Other times they're just, it's like, how's Vita Vea there making a tackle? Just pops the ball carrier to stop him short of the sticks, and it's like, that's the play. That is the play that's going to spark the Bucs and keep their NFC South playoff hopes alive. Vita Vea, open field tackle on 3rd and 6. So then the Cowboys punt, first play from scrimmage. And I want to talk about Baker in a minute here. He is just scrambling around. He's in the grasp. I'm waiting for the whistle. You're waiting for the whistle, but he's still kind of moving forward. Shovels it off to Rachaad White. It's like, oh, Baker did it again. That's the play. Like a middle play. I'm thinking, like, oh, it's all going through my head. That's the play that's going to keep the Bucs NFC South playoff hopes alive.
Yeah.
Rachaad White they turned a sack into a positive play, and Rachaad White's going to the ground. And as they come up from the ground, DaRon Bland has the football, stripped it, and kept it on the tackle to seal the game for the Cowboys. Just unreal turn of events, the way that game finished.
Baker couldn't believe it. Like he made this miracle offload in the tackle to get away from a sack and gets it to White, who then starts picking up yards through contact, like dragging people for yardage. And then, as you said, the play ended. It went down, and suddenly Dallas is coming up with the football. And Baker's like, what the hell just happened? Like, what? We just made a play. How have they got the football? And It was literally as they're falling to the ground, Bland just strips the ball away from him as he's fighting for that extra yardage. Incredible play. The Vita Vea thing was kind of funny because they dropped him into coverage, but they also dropped him from the other side of the line. Yeah. So he's dropping in the direction of the quick pass. There are some times when you're playing football, and I think this is the case for less gifted players. Maybe for people like Barry Sanders, they're able to plot these things out in advance. But for humans, you tend to just react to the thing immediately in front of you, right? So like, oh, look, player over here, I'll cut inside of this guy. And there are some times where the first move you make takes you, unfortunately, into a different set of circumstances that do not progress to your advantage. So whoever it was it Ferguson? Whoever the tight end
Ferguson.
Makes a cut past the first guy. Unfortunately, that cut took him directly into the path of 350 pounds worth of Vita Vea with a head start. And he just got, like, smushed. Just Vita Vea like a semi-truck hitting a deer on the highway, just plows straight over the tight end, crushes him into the turf. You're like, yeah, I bet he wished he didn't make that cut this time. You know, if he just taken on the guy to the outside instead, he'd have had a much better outcome.
I love that about football, though. There's so many of those key plays, and I hate when the key plays get diminished just because the team lost. Like, again, if the Bucs pull off the upset, we're all going back and like, this was the play, Vita Vea dropping into coverage to keep things alive. Like, let's at least celebrate it the same way. And you mentioned, earlier today and last night when we were talking about the game, the Jordan Lewis interception is one of the best plays you've ever seen. And I do think the broadcast did a nice job highlighting that too. He took a hand to the face mask during the play, then looks up, finds the ball, grabs it with one arm. Just an incredible interception from Jordan Lewis earlier in the game. The Baker Mayfield experience in this one, I've said this for years, though, the middle tier type of quarterback is that, during a 60-minute game, that's the type of guy, like, if you're a believer, you'll have some fodder. If you're a doubter, you'll have some fodder. And if you're following social media and this and that, it's like, oh, Baker Mayfield's underrated and he's great at this, this, and this. And then someone else will say, oh, this guy's overrated and you can't win with him and he makes too many mistakes. And like, both things are true.
Yeah.
This just felt like the pinnacle of Baker, right? He's like a crash test dummy in the pocket. He's tripping over his own offensive lineman for sacks. He's breaking free to make other plays. He's making laser beam tight window throws, making bad decisions, making good decisions. It's all rolled in to one game. I just get the same feeling with Geno Smith in so many games as well. Similar type of quarterback, right? Where it's like they've elevated their team, but have they hit a ceiling is like a fair question every week, because every time you're like, yes, 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 there's also a bunch of no's during the same experience.
Yeah, but I think it's sort of like the Jameis coaster, right? Like Jameis Winston, we were sort of earlier in his career before he became just the backup crazy Jameis Winston. When he was starting crazy Jameis Winston, it was like, it's a wild roller coaster, right? And some weeks you're going to get those 500-yard, 4-touchdown games, and the next week he's going to throw 3 interceptions, like throw for, $180, and you're like, this guy's not functional. And overall, over the course of a season, no matter what he did, it shook out to like a bang average performance, eventually. And then teams finally just got sick of that. And we're like, but that's not good enough anymore. We're moving on. Baker and Geno and guys like that, they've shown, I think, that they're capable of spectacular games. Like, there is no ceiling to what they do when they're on, right? And that, I think, is incredibly enticing, because you can convince yourself that in any given game, Baker can go toe-to-toe with the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and we can come out on top. It's just that it's probably not going to happen 3 or 4 weeks in a row, and you're eventually going to get bad Baker. Even within the same game, he's going to go on the bad streak, and that's the problem. But it's like the ceiling of what he can do in a game is basically limitless. Like, he's capable of going at the same level as anybody. And that, I think, is why those guys are still intriguing and enticing and deserved of starting spots, while even if there's a glut of quarterbacks that could potentially start. I just wanted to give credit to the Dallas defense. Like, with Micah Parsons coming back, it's too little too late. But the Dallas defense in the last few weeks has really just showed up again the way they were. Now, look, they've gotten healthy again. Parsons coming back, Deron Bland coming back, some other really important players. But like Jordan Lewis was spectacular in this game, even outside of that one incredible interception. Deron Bland makes the key play to ice it. Micah Parsons was a formidable problem. Like the pass rush, Odigizua made a few plays, like quick wins again. That defense for Dallas has started to look like the unit that it was supposed to be this season.
And then I want to shout out CeeDee Lamb. Again, broadcast, nice job highlighting his shoulder injury, what he was playing through. Has a 52-yarder, falls on the shoulder, had to limit some of his reps. I know you were begging for at least a carry so he could get the more than a half rushing yard. Didn't get there for prize picks, but Lamb just balled out in the first half. They were feeding him early and often again, which I think they've done well this year. A lot of games this year where they've gotten their best player involved and he's come through. Other dudes had to step up in the second half as he took fewer reps, but finishes with 105 yards on 7 catches.
Yeah. Incredible sort of strength and determination and fortitude for, remember, a dead season. I mean, they're not playing for anything at this point. Like, once he hurt his shoulder again, this is something that he's had for a lot of this season. I think it would have been perfectly justifiable to be like, I'm out, I'm done, wrap it up for the game, if not longer, and come back healthy. But he's out there battling through a bad shoulder, which is serious enough that they're saying, he thinks about how he's going to fall or end a play when he has the ball in his hands. Like, he's calculating that during a play, how he has to end this play so that he doesn't land on his bad shoulder. Incredible performance by him. Unfortunate that did mean that they weren't going to give him an end around, which cost me my prize picks lineup on my one rushing yard. But yeah, incredible performance by him, who remains one of the best receivers in the game.
As they were talking through this, I'm like, well, Sam, you're not getting your carry. Sorry. It's just not happening.
All those plays went to Turpin instead.
Yes, they did. Turpin, Vita Vea had a tackle on him too at one point, which was beautiful.
What I really do like about football sometimes, rugby's the same, but like two people that are like Vita Vea and Kevontae Turpin play the same sport, right? Yeah. And sometimes, not very often, but sometimes those players meet in a way that is a direct collision. And again, like this will happen to you sometime. Like Turpin's getting the ball, he's running into space, and he just gets enveloped by Vita Vea. And you're like, there is nothing you can do at that point from Turpin's perspective. You are a passenger because you've run into a guy that outweighs you by 200 pounds, right? Like sometimes when you're less relevant for you, but for smaller people, you think, not only if you could, those sort of ridiculous, like everyman arguments that surface every now and again. If you were given a pass rushing rep against an offensive tackle, what would it look like, right? Not only could you not move him, right? If you took a running leap and leapt at him, he wouldn't move, right? I could not, it's not a case of anchoring against my bull rush. If I took a 10-yard run up and leapt right at the head of an offensive tackle, I don't think he would move backwards. That's what happened to Turpin with Vita Vea. He ran right into him, and he was the one moving backwards.
Beautiful play. Beautiful football. This was a fun game, as we said. The one thing I wanted to touch on quickly, so just to remind people, Falcons, they're all tied at 8-7 right now, Falcons and Bucks. Falcons have the tiebreaker, so if they win out, they win the NFC South. Bucks have a slightly easier schedule, though. They have the Panthers and the Saints. Falcons have the Commanders and the Panthers. So they both have the Panthers. Falcons are on the road for both games, though I think Tampa might be at home for both. So the Bucks, I think, technically might even have better odds to end up winning because of the Commanders being a better team in particular.
And the Commanders still obviously have something to play for. They haven't technically wrapped up that playoff spot. And are they still in? Is seeding still relevant for them? Yeah,
probably a couple of spots.
it is. Yeah, they can jump. They can certainly jump Green Bay.
Do you think? And then I want to know, what do you make of the Mike McCarthy playing for him? Because Chris and Mike obviously have insight. That's what they're hearing. Players want to play for McCarthy, but it's like, I don't know. I think some of that's overrated. Like, it's kind of your job to play football,
Right.
and go out there, and you're always on film. For your job, you're not going to stop playing hard just because you're out of the playoffs. You got to. No, a guy like CeeDee Lamb, maybe he should shut it down if he's dealing with a serious shoulder injury. That's fine. But if you're playing football, go play football. That's their job. You have 2 more games, go play it. And I think we overrate. Oh, they're not quitting for Mike McCarthy. Give him another shot. They're 7-8. This is still a massive underachieving season, though. Of course, they lose their starting quarterback too as a factor.
So you're right that it's overrated in terms of predictive power, or what impact it can have on next season, say, right? Which is pretty important. I think it is important, though, as a general concept. The fact that your team, having just learned that they are eliminated from this playoffs in a disappointing season and effectively the year's done, the fact that they have one of their best performances and one of their hardest playing performances, I think is an endorsement of Mike McCarthy. Now, we can weigh how important that is in the decision to rehire him, but I think it is an important thing. And the fact that it's a plus for him, like a tick in his check mark. Players played hard with nothing on the line for Mike McCarthy versus another coach where that wouldn't be true, I think is an important thing, right? Mike McCarthy being able to engender that desire and want from his players, I think is a relevant thing when we're debating should he be rehired. I also think, independent of whether or not I would do it, and I don't think that I would, I mean, if they hadn't improved from 12 wins this year, which is kind of the state of play heading into the season, he would have been under the hot seat anyway. If it had just been a routine 10-win season where they were in the playoffs, again fall short, say in the wild card round, he'd be under intense scrutiny at that point. So the fact that it's been a disaster and hasn't even hit that stage, I don't see how he isn't on the hot seat. But independent of that, I think what they mentioned on the broadcast, and didn't quite say it in these words, but suggested as much, Jerry Jones is looking for a reason to keep Mike McCarthy. That's his disposition heading into this decision. He's like, just give me the excuse to be able to keep my guy, right? Year after year after year, this was the dynamic with Jason Garrett as head coach, right? People were calling for that guy's job years before they finally gave in and said, okay, fine, we'll do it now. He's just looking for any excuse to keep the guy that he likes in the job, right? He likes Mike McCarthy. He does believe, I think, that this is the team that can win it. He wants to be given any sign to say, no, I can keep him in. This was a bad year. It was injuries. But look, late in the year, once we got everybody healthy, we were winning games. They were playing hard. I'm going to run it back. I'm going to run it back with my guys, and next year's the year. I think that's how Jerry Jones is approaching this. He is looking for reasons to re-up Mike McCarthy.
And I don't know. I'm torn on it too, Sam. I'm just trying to look up his record really quick. Is it just the Cowboys factor here? Is it just the Jerry Jones factor? He's 82. He's 42-33 with Dallas. But the 2 losing seasons are the 2 years Dak got hurt, right? So 3 12-win seasons in the middle when you have healthy Dak Prescott. Our issue was you never show up in the playoffs, right? So you're always going to be awful in the playoffs. Does that mean we need to have a change?
Right.
Or is it still just like a flip of the coin? I don't know. We'll figure it out someday in the playoffs. We don't want to lose this baseline because it's still a baseline 10-plus win team that had a bad year and lost their quarterback in the middle. Because if Dak stayed, could they be 9-6 right now? Flip a couple games, flip a Cincinnati game, flip another game that Cooper Rush started in Dak's favor, and all of a sudden they're pushing 10 or 11 wins once again. If that's what they are, any other team, it's that'd be wild to get rid of a coach that has 12, and then maybe 10 wins.
I mean, it would, but it wouldn't be unprecedented, right? Remember, Marty Schottenheimer got canned at the end of a really successful season. What I think is a real black mark against Dallas is not that they lose in the playoffs. It's now the manner that they're losing. They lose in a way where it's like they choke. I think generally when people say things like choking, it's overblown. It's very single play oriented. But Dallas are showing up now to these games like they don't even think they have a shot of winning. They just show up and it's like, we're not the same team. So that's what would have me thinking about whether we need to make a change. Somebody needs to come in that can stop that from happening, right? Like, does a different version of Dan Campbell prevent that kind of institutional seizing up once they hit those important playoff games? Because that's the one area, like, we give Mike McCarthy plus points for his team still fighting hard in, week 16 with nothing on the line, but we probably have to take away some points by the fact that his team looks like it doesn't even show up once it reaches an important playoff game in January.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's a discussion because it's almost like the fact that they had some of the adversity almost gives him more reason to come back. Whereas, like, to your point, if they went 10 wins, first round exit, did it again, it would almost feel easier to, like, all right, we got to change it up. So we did it, man. Every game. Had Mike Renner on the show.
We did. Reunion.
Brought it to 9:45.
Yep.
That's how we do it.
So we won't have a show before Christmas, which means I think now is the time we should thank the people. This has been a big year for you and me, Steve. We're over at the 33rd team. We've left PFF. We've taken our show elsewhere. And it was a big leap because we were relying on a big chunk of our listenership to come with us. Otherwise, this thing was not going to work whatsoever. And a huge chunk of them have. So a massive thank you to everybody that's followed us over to the 33rd team and checked the mic and has subscribed to the show or still listens through audio. A massive thank you to all the new people as well that didn't follow us but have discovered us since then and have stuck around. So massive thank you to all those people. Couldn't be more grateful because you allow us to do what we're doing.
Look at how positive you are in the holiday season. The joy that you are eliciting right now. The Santa hat, all of a sudden, that's all you need. Ditto. Thanks to everybody. We appreciate it. Programming notes. Sam, I don't think we're going to go live tonight, are we? We'll can it tonight. Unless something crazy happens, we'll leave it TBD. We could press the button to go live tonight after Packers Saints. But we will not have a show tomorrow. So the only two games we won't preview are the two Christmas games, Chiefs and Steelers, Ravens and Texans. We'll do our Week 17 preview on Thursday morning, usual time, 10:30 a.m. We'll review those two Christmas games to start, though. So we'll review those games right up top and then preview the rest of the Week 17 action. So we'll kind of like do a preview and a review. Mm-hmm. What did you think was going to happen on Christmas? And then we'll review what happened on Christmas as well.
We could just do the most accurate preview we've ever done.
Yeah, it'll be a great. We'll preview the two games.
Right.
I really see Mahomes, with a 29-yard scramble to seal it against Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. Really seeing it. Mm-hmm. So anyway, appreciate everybody. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever else you got going on. But I'm gonna go celebrate Christmas stuff with the kids. Sound good?
Yeah, seems reasonable.
All right. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again on Thursday with more. Check the mic. Merry Christmas.